Chapter 27-26. The dancing branches were like the claws of a ghost as they tried to grab her. At the same time, a large opening opened up on the tree. It looked like the mouth of the tree, and there were even sharp teeth inside. Woo! A ghost-like howl spread through the forest. The waving branches tried to send her into the mouths that were dripping with blood and juice. When Feng Jiu saw this, she brandished her azure-edged sword and slashed down. The branch that was reaching over was cut off and fell to the ground with a swoosh. However, the branch that was cut off grew a new bud and suddenly shot out to attack. There were too many branches that came out from the surroundings, and they were too fast. She was unable to react in time, and one of her legs was entangled. She was hung upside down in the air, and the branches below were still reaching towards her. Seeing that the branches would regrow after being chopped off by the long sword, the spiritual energy in her body surged. Her finger brushed across the Qing Feng sword, and with a whoosh, a flame abruptly sprang out and pervaded the longsword. As she swung the longsword, the flame burned, and the branches that were cut off finally stopped regrowing. The branches that were entangled around her legs wanted to throw her into the gaping mouth. She immediately cut off the branches that were entangled around her legs. At the same time, she raised her hand and a flame attacked the gaping mouth below her. Whoosh! Bang! Only the sound of flames could be heard, followed by a loud bang. The flames had burned the bloody wound into a charred black. The smell of burnt flesh permeated the air, accompanied by a foul stench. Woo! Ayo! As if it was screaming, the big tree gradually withered. The dancing branches all drooped down as if they had lost their life force. After finding the Achilles heel of these trees, Feng Jiu had an easier time dealing with them. In less than an hour, the trees all closed their mouths. The dancing branches also stretched back, not daring to touch her. Feng Jiu glanced at it and put away the sword in her hand. She flicked her robe and brushed away the red leaves on her shoulder. Only then did she walk forward. With every step she took, the branches in front of her automatically retracted, making a path for her. It seemed that the roots of the trees could not be moved, otherwise they would have to pull up the roots and hide to the side. In the mangrove forest, the red leaves fluttered in the wind and fell slowly. On the path created by the big tree, the red figure walked slowly as if he was stepping on the wind. His clothes fluttered and his black hair fluttered. He looked like an immortal from a painting that had fallen into the mortal world. Just his back view, which seemed to have merged with the surroundings, was already as beautiful as a painting. However, with the arrival of evening, the cold inchi inside became more and more intense. On the ground that was covered with red leaves, wisps of ghosts suddenly floated and condensed. They followed Feng Jiu just like that, wanting to get closer but unable to do so. Feng Jiu, who was originally walking slowly, seemed to have sensed something. She stopped and looked back. At the same time, the wisps of ghosts quickly hid. Looking at the cold inchi that permeated the quiet forest, her eyes flashed and she said coldly, "It's best that you don't follow me. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." Chapter 27-27. She continued to walk forward. As night fell, she still hadn't walked out of the mangrove forest. Thus, she found a place to sit down, lit a fire, and rested. In the deep and cold mangrove forest, it was silent. Only a cluster of flames danced in the forest. Feng Jiu, who was sitting beside the fire, was dressed in red. If one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't be able to tell that someone was sitting there. A group of people was walking in the forest. They could vaguely see the flames dancing in the forest. The leader paused and said to the people behind him, "There seems to be a fire over there. Could it be that someone is sleeping in the forest at night? Who would dare to sleep in here? They're really not afraid of death." A man behind said as he looked in the direction of the fire, "We've been walking around in this forest for a few days and haven't been able to get out. How about this? Let's see who's in front of us and see if the other group knows how to leave this forest." Hearing the middle-aged man's words, the people behind thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. All right. Thus, the group of people walked in that direction. The surrounding leaves automatically avoided them when they touched them. Clearly, this group of people had also taught them a lesson. Fengjiu was drinking monkey wine under a tree when she heard footsteps coming in her direction. She narrowed her eyes and looked in the direction of the footsteps. Not long after, she saw more than 20 torches moving in the forest. At first glance, the dancing flames really looked like willow, the wisps in the night. Those people looked like that to her, but how could she not look like that to those people? When they walked towards the flames, they saw the flames burning on the ground from afar. When they looked again, they only saw a human head staring at them. In the middle of the night, when the head suddenly looked at them like that, it scared the two men who ran in front and wanted to see what was going on. They instinctively put up a defensive posture and shouted at the same time. "What the hell?" Fengjiu was startled. She glanced at those people with a strange expression. Then, she looked down at her red clothes and chuckled. "I'm not a ghost." Hearing the laughter, the two men still felt their hair stand on end. Only when they focused their eyes did they see that it was a young man wearing a red robe. The previous blurry image became clear at this moment, allowing them to put down their worries. "I thought it was some kind of ghost. It gave me a fright. Why did I only see a head staring at us? What the hell?" One of the men muttered. As they walked closer, a pair of eyes sized up Fengjiu. "Don't be presumptuous." The middle-aged man in the lead shouted with a sullen face. He glanced at the man, who still wanted to say something. Only then did the man shut his mouth and retreat to the back. The middle-aged man looked at the young man in red and hid the surprise in his eyes. He cupped his hands and said, "Sir, please don't take offense. My brother means no harm." Fengjiu smiled and looked at the middle-aged man who spoke. "It's fine." She continued to drink the monkey wine and carefully tasted it. Hearing this, the middle-aged man asked, "Sir, are you alone? Would it be possible for us to join you?" Chapter 27-28. I'm just one person, but you're a whole team. Why do you need to accompany me? Her voice carried a hint of a smile as she spoke unhurriedly. When the middle-aged man heard this, he smiled and said, "To tell you the truth, we've been trapped here for a few days and haven't been able to get out of this forest. Seeing that you're here, we wanted to invite you to lead us out of this forest." He didn't hide anything and directly told them his plan. In his opinion, this young man dared to come here alone at such a young age. It was obvious that he was extraordinary. Moreover, their entire team was trapped here, but he was alone. It was obvious that he had a card up his sleeve. Those who could come to this place were definitely not ordinary people. Even if the young man in front of him didn't look very strong, he didn't dare to be careless and offend him. So it's like this. Fengjiu supported her chin with one hand and stared at them for a while, then slowly said, "I can't lead you out of this forest, but no matter what, there should be some benefits, right?" Hearing this, everyone was stunned for a moment. They had never met someone like this young man, asking for benefits as soon as he opened his mouth. Although they were surprised, they thought it was normal. He was leading them out of this damn place, so it was only right for them to give him some benefits. For a moment, the people at the back of the team looked at the middle-aged man, as if waiting for him to make a decision. The middle-aged man looked at the red-robed young man who was sitting leisurely and didn't directly agree. Instead, he asked, "What would you like as a reward? Gold, silver, and jewels are out of the question. If there are any strange things or precious elixirs, I can accept them." She smiled and looked at the middle-aged man, watching him ponder. The people at the back of the team didn't say anything and just stared at Fengjiu, secretly sizing her up. The middle-aged man thought for a while, then took out some things from his space and placed them in front of her. "Take a look and see if there's anything you like." It was normal for a young man to want some strange things, but why would he also want precious elixirs? What would he use them for? Fengjiu looked at the things in front of her and saw that there were a few spiritual herbs, but none of them were rare or precious. She only took a glance at them and then turned her eyes away to look at those little things. Although she said they were small things, they weren't the small things that were placed in the streets. In her opinion, these things were more like small gifts that he wanted to bring back home. Just as she was thinking, she heard the middle-aged man's voice. "Some of these things were collected on the road, and some were bought by me. Actually, I'm going to bring them back as a gift." Alluring Ghost Doctor. Chapter 27-29. Have a seat. We'll leave when the sun rises, Fengjiu said as he played with the white jade gourd in his hand. He did not look at them again. When the middle-aged man heard him, he waved his hand and gestured for the people behind him to rest here. Then, another bonfire was lit. One of them even set up a defensive array around it. My surname is He, and my name is Shan Shu. How should I address you? The middle-aged man asked as he sat down beside the bonfire in front of the young man. You can call me Ninth Young Lord, Fengjiu said without even looking up. He Shu nodded when he heard that. Ninth Young Lord, you're here alone. Where are you going? Fengjiu looked up and glanced at him. A smile appeared on his face. He said half-truthfully, I'm bored and have some fun. Everyone from the He family was stunned. Have some fun and have some fun? Who would believe that? This was not a place to have fun. They could die here if they were not careful. However, when He Shu wanted to ask more questions, she saw the young man in front of her play with the white jade gourd and hanging on his waist. He leaned back against the tree and fell asleep. Looking at the tree again, it was obviously sharp, but it was shaved flat. The whole tree was wilted as if it had died. Seeing that He Shu had no intention of talking, he did not say anything else. He got up and walked back to the group. He sat down among them and said to everyone, let's take the time to rest. We still have a long way to go tomorrow. Surprisingly, nothing happened that night. Fengjiu opened his eyes in the middle of the night. He only saw a few spirits floating around, but they did not dare to go near. Well, these people's strength and aura were so strong. How could a few spirits dare to go near them? They had a good night's sleep until the next morning. The fire was extinguished. She used water to wash her face and rinse her mouth. She tidied her clothes and took out some fruits to eat. Then, she looked at the He family's team. Everyone quickly got up and formed the team in a few seconds. She raised her eyebrows. When she saw He Shu walking over, she said, let's go. She walked in front and led them forward. Everyone in the group looked at each other. Among them, a man walking at the back could not help but mutter, this ninth young master is so young, and he doesn't look very strong. Can he really walk out of this damned forest? Are you trying to trick us? The man next to him smiled and said in a clear voice, I don't think so. He dares to come here alone, so he is not an ordinary person. That's true. If an ordinary person were to come to this place, they would have died long ago. The man nodded in agreement. So, he stopped talking and quietly walked behind while paying attention to the surrounding movements. After walking for 2 hours, they saw that the red-clothed youth in front of them had been eating fruits in his hand. Hearing the crisp sound of chewing, the people behind him couldn't help but feel envious. Coming to this place was not as casual as coming back home. For things like fruits, they could only look for wild fruits in the forest. However, the wild fruits that they found were usually so sour that their teeth fell off. However, the ones that the young man in front of them was eating were sweet and juicy, causing them to salivate from time to time. Chapter 27-30. Because of this, when he suddenly stopped, they were all stunned. They asked in confusion, what's wrong? Why aren't we moving? Fengjiu, who was in front, turned around and looked at them calmly. He smiled and said, we're already out of the forest. Everyone, do as you please. As he spoke, he flicked his robes and leaped away like a gentle breeze, leaving behind the crowd with their eyes wide open in astonishment. They looked around and muttered in surprise, we're out. How do we get out? We've been walking for a few days, and we still haven't gotten out of that damn place. How do we get out this time? He Shu looked at the young man in red who had disappeared and muttered softly. Sure enough, those who enter this place are not ordinary people. No wonder the young man dared to enter this place alone. This person's cultivation level must be far above theirs. Otherwise, why would he be traveling alone? All right, let's continue on our way. He turned around and said. Then, he led the group forward. Fengjiu stepped on the breeze and headed into the forest. He was free and did not have to wait for anyone. His speed was much faster than before. He followed the directions on the map and did not take any detours. After a few days, he arrived at the center of the island where the ladder to immortality was. This is it, right? She muttered softly. Her red figure floated down and looked at her surroundings. She was surrounded by mountains on all sides. The mountains were so tall that they seemed to reach into the clouds. The place she was standing on was completely empty. Even large rocks were hard to find, let alone trees. However, in the middle of the island, there was a green lake. Above the lake, smoke rose in spirals. She could vaguely see lotus flowers blooming in the lake. She could not help but let out a soft cry of surprise. She walked up to the side of the lake and looked at it. The lake water was green and the surface was clear. However, on the surface of the lake, there were golden lotus flowers blooming. The lotus flowers shone with a golden light and condensed spiritual power. When she counted them carefully, there were exactly 9 golden lotuses. 9 by 9? These golden lotuses are strange. She muttered softly. Her gaze swept across the lotuses and landed on the lotus heads. The lotus seeds looked very plump. This lake is strange. I wonder if it can be kept in the space. What about becoming a scenery in her space? She made up her mind and stared at the green lake. Seeing that there was no one around, she walked around and looked around carefully. The water source of the lake was most likely the geocentric water of the Punglai Immortal Island. If that was the case, it would be difficult to move it into the space, and it would consume a lot of spiritual power. However, if he only plucked the golden lotus and didn't move the lake, he felt that it would be a waste. Thus, she thought for a moment and finally decided to move the lake into her space. In any case, her space was a world of its own. No matter how much water there was, it could accommodate it. She immediately took action. She used her spiritual energy as a guide, and with a thought, the surrounding aura instantly changed. The surface of the lake in particular trembled slightly and ripples spread out. Chapter 27:31. All the experts who were heading towards this place felt that the entire center of the island was shaking. They couldn't help but be shocked and ask what was going on. However, they were still very far from the center of the island. Even if they wanted to know, they couldn't do anything. They were shocked and felt that something must have happened in the center of the lake. But what else could have happened there? Could it be that the stairway of immortality had appeared in advance? Thinking of this, they sped up and headed towards that place. However, as they hurried, they found that the center of the island no longer shook. It was as if it had calmed down and returned to normal. Even so, they were only stunned for a moment before they hurried towards that place. In the center of the island, the lake in front of Fengjiu was only left with a deep hole. It was as if it had dried up and there wasn't a single drop of water left. Even Fengjiu, who had been standing at the side, had disappeared. At this time, Fengjiu was actually swept into the lake in the space. When she drew the water into the space, a huge white python appeared in the end. When the white python was drawn into the space along with the water, it curled its tail and pulled her in as well. In the space, she climbed out of the lake with a wet body. In her hand, she was still holding a dagger. The blood on the dagger had been washed clean by the lake water. It was as clean as before. Several contracted beasts were standing by the lake. When they saw her come out, they hurriedly pulled her and asked, "Master, how are you? Are you hurt?" "Ah, Master, look, the blood of the white python has disappeared." White exclaimed and pointed at the gradually disappearing blood in the lake. Fengjiu sat on the side and looked back. She saw that the blood of the white python that she had killed was disappearing little by little. The lake water was as green as before. If it weren't for the floating corpse of the white python, one wouldn't have been able to tell that it had been stained with blood just now. "Go and get the corpse out. Don't dirty the water." Fengjiu gestured. After putting away the dagger, she took out an elixir and swallowed it. She didn't expect that there would be such a white python here. At that time, after the white python dragged her in, it forced her into the water and opened its mouth to swallow her. Therefore, she killed it without thinking. She had used up too much of her spiritual power, and after the battle underwater, she was exhausted. Thus, after changing out of her wet clothes, she told the contract beasts, "Don't touch the golden lotus." Then, she fell into a deep sleep. When she fell asleep, her contract beasts were so scared that they stayed by her side and didn't dare to leave. Only after she had rested enough to recover her spiritual power did she wake up. When she woke up, she realized that she had slept for 3 days. However, she thought for a moment. 3 days inside was only 1 day outside. Thus, she was in no hurry to leave. Instead, she began to study the Golden Lotus. Could it be that Elder Tianji wanted me to come to the Immortal Ascension Stairs because of this? After all, she had the ancient green lotus in her body, and this golden lotus didn't look simple either. She frowned slightly and thought about Elder Tianji's half-spoken words. She couldn't help but cross her arms and stare at the golden lotus in deep thought. Finally, her eyes flashed, and she revealed a smile. Whether or not he came for this golden lotus, it's true that this golden lotus is a good thing. If it's used to refine elixirs, what kind of elixirs will it produce? She muttered softly and couldn't help but look forward to it. Chapter 2732. She took a lotus seed and ate it. She felt the spirit energy in her mouth multiply. Her cultivation that had been stuck at the peak of the immortal emperor realm actually showed signs of a breakthrough. Her heart trembled. She couldn't help but put away the lotus seed. Then, she went to a place and sat down cross-legged to cultivate. The spirit energy in her body surged like water flowing into the sea. It stirred up waves in her body. The surging spirit energy expanded her meridians. Her meridians expanded once again. Spirit energy poured into her dantian. Every pore on her body stretched and frantically absorbed the spirit energy in this space. Not only were the veins in her body expanding, but even the green lotus in her body was crazily absorbing spiritual energy. If it weren't for the green lotus, she would have exploded and died from the spiritual energy that was surging into her body. Her frantic absorption of spirit energy caused the several contract beasts in the space to be horrified. However, they remembered their master's orders. Thus, they only stood in the distance and watched. They didn't approach. In this world, the clouds and the sky churned. Spirit energy surged from below. Fengjiu, who was sitting cross-legged, a powerful aura and pressure spread out. The spirit energy that could be seen with the naked eye tightly wrapped around her. Gradually, the contract beasts in the distance couldn't see her figure. Gotcha! Boom! Lightning flashed through the sky as if it wanted to strike down at Fengjiu. Immediately after that, a thunderclap struck down from the sky and descended on a Fengjiu who was sitting cross-legged. A powerful airflow surged out from the thunderclap and whistled through the air blades. A miserable scream came from Fengjiu's mouth. Her red robe was scorched by the heavenly thunder and faintly emitted a charred smell. The powerful wind blades seemed to be dismembered. Her robe and skin were cut open. Streams of blood seeped out. It was a ghastly sight. The azure lotus in her body revolved and gradually grew bigger. Petals bloomed. A faint azure aura and pure spirit energy pervaded her body. However, it didn't heal her injuries. Gotcha! Boom! Another bolt of lightning flashed by, and the heavenly thunder struck Fengjiu's body with a rumble. In an instant, another blood-curdling scream was heard. Fengjiu's sweat mixed with the blood on her body. This heavenly lightning was different from the previous ones. Every heavenly lightning caused her flesh, bones, and blood to suffer great pain. Her skin cracked open, and the sparks from the heavenly lightning burned her flesh. One could imagine the pain she was in. However, the most unbearable thing for her was that the tendons and veins in her body were being stretched inch by inch. It was as if someone was chopping at her tendons and bones with a sharp knife. The pain penetrated her bones and reached her heart. Crack! Boom! Chapter 2733. The cultivators who had rushed over all stared at the dried lake in front of them with wide eyes and mouths agape. They couldn't close their mouths, as if they were stuffed with duck eggs. That lake was formed from the water in the heart of the island. It had been formed for many years, and the lake was not shallow. Moreover, There was a white python at the level of a divine beast guarding the golden lotuses. Many experts who wanted to pluck the golden lotuses often lost their lives in the lake. But now, not only was the golden lotuses gone, even the water in the lake and the white python were gone. All that was left was a dried-up big hole. How could they not be dumbfounded? But besides them, there was no one else here. Moreover, they had just rushed over. Even if they hadn't just arrived, they didn't have the ability to dry up the lake. For a moment, all the cultivators stood there with their eyes wide open. They couldn't figure out what was going on. In the space, Fengjiu was still in the process of advancing. This time, the advancement had already lasted for several days. After 3 bolts of heavenly lightning fell, the clouds in the sky still hadn't dispersed. At this time, a thunderous voice was echoing in Fengjiu's mind. The Heavenly Tao's 3 questions. The first question, what is the Heavenly Tao? These words resounded in Fengjiu's mind. That voice went straight to the depths of her soul, shaking her ears until they hurt. The Heavenly Tao's 3 questions? The first question, what is the Heavenly Tao? She tried her best to calm down and ignored the sharp pain in her spine. Instead, she seriously pondered, what is the Heavenly Tao? The Tao of immortality, the Tao of longevity, is regarded as the Heavenly Tao. However, there is only one Tao of immortality. But every cultivator's path and circumstances are different. Different lives have different answers. What is the Heavenly Tao? There are thousands of answers, but only one belongs to me. Using the right heart to compete with the heavens. What is the Heavenly Tao? I am Heavenly Tao. She heard her cold voice that contained a powerful pressure reverberate in the sky. Just as she finished speaking, a loud rumbling sound rang out in the sky. It was like the rumbling of thunder, and it also sounded like tens of thousands of beasts were galloping over. It was so aggressive that it shook people's hearts. The clouds rolled, and the thunder continued. The voice in the sky seemed to be silent for a moment. In the next moment, the clouds stopped, and the sound of thunder came again. The Heavenly Tao's 3 questions. The second question, why did you embark on the Tao of immortality? As soon as he finished speaking, Fengjiu immediately said, in order to become a supreme martial artist, to protect the people I want to protect. The moment she finished speaking, another thunderous rumble echoed out. Not long after, everything became quiet once more, and that person's voice rang out for the 3rd time. The Heavenly Tao's 3 questions of Chapter 2734. The green lotus that was originally in her body appeared under her seat for some reason. The green lotus bloomed, and the lotus seat emitted a gentle green light. A small blooming green lotus accompanied by a gentle green light appeared between her eyebrows, forming a lotus mark. The edges of each petal of the green lotus were floating with a golden light. The golden and green light complemented each other, making her originally exquisite and beautiful face look even more elegant and otherworldly. She was so beautiful that she was like an immortal who did not belong to the mortal world. Just one look at her was enough to make people lose their minds. The contract beasts stared at this scene in a daze. They watched as the aura in the surroundings gradually dissipated and returned to normal. Finally, Lao Bai cheered happily. That's great. Master has advanced, and she has become more beautiful. As he spoke, his saliva flowed out, but he sucked it back in. The aura in her body calmed down, and Fengjiu slowly opened her eyes. Her strength had advanced another level, from the peak of the immortal Emperor realm to the divine God realm. She could feel that her state of mind seemed to have changed a little. She stretched out her hand and saw that the cut skin had recovered to its original state. Her skin was like ice and jade, white and flawless. When she stood up, she saw the tattered robe hanging on her body. Seeing this, she smiled slightly, turned around, and changed into a set of red robes. Master, Master, you have become more beautiful. Lao Bai was the first to run forward, and he circled around her to look at her. Congratulations, Master, for advancing again. Congratulations, Master, for breaking through to the divine god realm. Congratulations, Master. The contract beasts thanked her one after another. They looked at their master with joy, and there was a faint sense of pride and satisfaction in their hearts. Only the silver wolf was a little anxious and worried. It had not been contracted yet. Now that Master had advanced again, would Master not want it anymore? For a moment, it was nervous. Fengjiu slowly walked towards the spirit spring and looked at her reflection in the water. Her red dress made her look even more outstanding and enchanting, especially the golden lotus between her eyebrows. It was so lifelike that it made her look even more noble and extraordinary. Her fingers gently stroked the green lotus between her eyebrows. With a thought, her glabella burned and the golden-rimmed green lotus disappeared. Her fingertips moved and a cluster of flames leaped up. The flames danced between her fingers, making her feel a steady flow of spiritual energy in her body, as well as a different feeling from before. So this is what it feels like to be at the heavenly deity realm. Indeed, we are on a completely different level, a completely different world. Her voice rang out slowly, neither fast nor slow, as if it came from the horizon, faintly discernible. Master, the contract beasts looked at her. Seeing her eyebrows move slightly, they turned around and sat down cross-legged. Don't disturb me. After Fengjiu said this, she closed her eyes. This time, it was not the spiritual energy in her body that surged, but the aura of Xian energy. Seeing that she was about to advance again, the contract beasts quickly retreated and squatted at a distance to watch her. Master had just entered the heavenly deity realm. Even if she advanced again, it should be the improvement of her Xian Qi cultivation. Chapter 2735. When she appeared in the crowd's line of sight, all the cultivators were sizing her up. Most of the cultivators here were accompanied by a few people. After all, even the most confident cultivators wouldn't come here alone. However, they saw a young man in red standing here alone. Most importantly, this person was so young, and his appearance and bearing were so extraordinary. Fengjiu ignored the gazes of the crowd and stared at the big hole in front of her. She walked to the edge of the hole and blinked when she saw that there was no more water inside. Little friend, are you here for the immortal ascension stairs as well? An old man walked out and asked, his gaze landing on Fengjiu. Yes. Fengjiu nodded and said, I heard that very few people can climb the immortal ascension stairs, so I thought I'd come to watch the show. Hearing this, the crowd finally understood. So he was just here to watch the show. That was more like it. If he was here to attempt to ascend the immortal ascension stairs, with his age and cultivation level, he wouldn't be qualified to do so. I heard that only immortal emperors can climb the immortal ascension stairs. The old man stroked his beard and looked at the sky. Hearing this, Fengjiu looked at him and asked, Old friend, with your immortal venerable cultivation, do you want to give it a try as well? When the old man heard this, he couldn't help but be startled. Then he smiled. He didn't expect this young man to call him old friend when he called him little friend. He stroked his beard and said with a smile, Of course I want to give it a try. Although only immortal emperors can climb the immortal ascension stairs, isn't the Tao of immortality also a struggle against the heavens? Rumor has it that 100 years ago, a cultivator with the strength of an immortal sovereign broke through halfway up the immortal ascension stairs and ascended to the heavenly stairway. The cultivators waiting here naturally want to compete with Tian Yi and compete with him. Then when will the immortal ascension stairs appear? She looked around and saw about 100 cultivators sitting on the ground. Some are sitting cross-legged, some are resting with their eyes closed, and some are observing their surroundings. It should be soon, the old man said slowly. Then he suddenly asked, Little friend, are you alone? Fengjiu smiled and said, One person is enough. Ha! Little friend, you are very confident. The old man paused and looked at Fengjiu meaningfully. You are also very capable. To be able to come here alone, this was no small feat. Fengjiu smiled and said, I was just lucky. Little friend, why don't you come and sit with us? The old man turned his body up to 10 cultivators who were sitting of a dozen cultivoff of the imif's group. Fengjiu glanced at them and thought for a while. Then he nodded and said, "That's fine." Then he walked over with the old man. When the members of the old man's family saw that the young man had arrived with their old ancestor in such a relaxed and indifferent manner, they couldn't help but be slightly startled. They were surprised that their old ancestor would actually treat this young man differently. After carefully sizing up the young man, they couldn't help but secretly praise him. What an elegant young man. This young man was dressed in red, and his face was as handsome as a celestial being. His bearing was outstanding, and there was a hint of nobility about him. Although his strength was not great, his appearance and bearing were enough to make people treat him differently. Chapter 2736. Great Ancestor. They bowed to their great ancestor, and their gazes landed on the young man. "Go rest yourselves." The old man waved his hand, telling them not to be restrained and to rest. "Yes." The cultivators responded, then took a few steps back and sat down again. Some sat cross-legged to cultivate, while others sat cross-legged to meditate. "Young friend, do you know how to play chess?" The old man asked with a smile. "A little," Fengjiu said. "That's good. Since we have nothing to do, let's play chess to pass the time." The old man took out a small four-legged table and placed it between the two of them. He then took out a set of chess pieces and handed a white one to Fengjiu. Fengjiu didn't say anything else. She just sat on a round piece of wood and placed the white chess piece first. Then, she started playing chess with the old man. When the two of them first started, the old man's expression was normal, and his speed of placing pieces was not slow. However, as more and more pieces were placed on the board, his speed clearly slowed down. Just like now, when it was his turn, he held a piece and thought for a long time, unable to place it down. Fengjiu wasn't in a hurry. He quietly watched, and when he saw that the old man was indeed slow, he took out some wine from his space and asked, "Old friend, do you want a drink?" No, I haven't thought about how to play this move." The old man didn't even look up. After thinking for a long time, he finally placed his piece. Just as he was about to look up and tell the young man that it was his turn, he saw that the white piece had already been placed. Looking at the white piece, he widened his eyes and asked, "You don't even need to think about how to play chess." "Usually I don't," Fengjiu said with a smile. At the same time, he raised his head and drank a mouthful of wine. He saw that the old man was still hesitating. When he placed his piece down again, Fengjiu placed his piece down as well. "You've lost." Fengjiu smiled and looked at Heizi, who had nowhere to go, as she spoke to the old man. The old man blew his beard and said, "Again." As he sorted the black and white pieces, he said, "I've never met a worthy opponent in chess. How can I lose to you?" "Actually, I only lost by half a piece," Fengjiu said with a smile as he pushed the divided pieces in front of the old man. "Why don't you take the white piece?" No. I'm fine with the black piece. Let's play again." He gestured and continued. "So, Fengjiu." The old man looked at Fengjiu and sighed. Hearing this, the old man smiled and removed the chessboard. He looked at Fengjiu and asked, "How should I address you, young friend?" "Ninth young master?" The old man was slightly stunned. Then he smiled. "Then I'll just call you young friend." As the two of them chatted, Fengjiu learned that the old man had been stuck at the venerable immortal level for a long time. Seeing that there was no hope for him to advance in his family, he wanted to try the stairway of immortality. "Ninth young master?" A surprised voice called out. Fengjiu, who was chatting with the old man, was startled. He turned around and saw that it was the people from the team they met in the mangrove forest. Chapter 2737. On the way here, the ninth young lord was alone. That meant that he was not with the old man. However, seeing that they were sitting together, they must have met on the way here. Fengjiu nodded and glanced at the group behind him. "Looks like you guys are not slow either." Hearing this, Hishu smiled. "Luckily, we met the ninth young lord on the way here. If not, we probably would not have reached here." "Oh, The old man looked at Fengjiu and smiled. My friend, did you help others on the way here? Do I not look like someone who would help others? Fengjiu raised his eyebrows. Ha ha, that's not what I meant. I just didn't expect it. The old man raised his head and laughed. After all, the group was not weak. If they needed this young man to save them, it meant that his intuition was right. This young man was not ordinary. Shu asked the group to sit on the side and sat down next to them. It's rare to meet someone familiar here. However, the ninth young lord, why did you come to the stairway of immortality? Don't tell him that the ninth young lord also wanted to try the stairway of immortality. Fengjiu smiled and said, this old friend just asked me the same question, and now you're asking me again. Since we're here, what do you want to do? Naturally, I want to do the same. There's no need to ask this question. Shu was stunned. Then he laughed out loud. Yes, I was foolish. Come, let me apologize to the ninth young lord. He took out some wine from his space and poured 3 cups. He said to the old man and Fengjiu, Elder, the ninth young lord, I'll drink first. As he spoke, he raised his cup and drank it in one gulp. When the old man saw this, he raised his cup and gestured to the two of them. He took a sip and put it down. Fengjiu liked wine too. When he saw the wine poured by others, he raised his cup and tasted it. Although it was good wine, it was still not as good as her hidden wine. As they waited for the immortal ascension stairs to appear, they sat in a circle and chatted with each other. Occasionally, some teams would come by and ask about the dried-up lake. However, no one knew what was going on. Speaking of which, it's strange. There was originally a lake here. Who would have thought that when we arrived, it had already dried up? Even the golden lotus in the lake had disappeared. There was also the white python in the lake. You should know that the white python had eaten many cultivators who had set their sights on the golden lotus. As the old man spoke to them, he looked at the empty lake in front of them and said, those golden lotuses are good stuff. It said that the lotus seeds are treasures that can increase one's strength, but no one knows where those golden lotuses have gone. When Fengjiu heard this, he coughed uncomfortably and said, perhaps it was plucked by someone, or perhaps the lake has long dried up, so the golden lotus is long gone. The white python in the lake is at the level of a divine beast. Moreover, it's huge in size and has extraordinary battle prowess. I don't know why it disappeared at this time. Otherwise, maybe we can find out what happened. As the old man spoke, he stroked his beard and looked ahead. However, when his gaze landed in front of him, his eyes suddenly shone with joy. He stood up and pointed forward, exclaiming excitedly, look, it's the immortal ascension stairs. The immortal ascension stairs have appeared. Chapter 2738. This is the immortal ascension ladder. Fengjiu stared at the scene in front of him in astonishment. This ladder seemed to be formed by clouds and extended down from the sky. That's right, this is the immortal ascension ladder. The old man's expression changed slightly. Not long after, the immortal ascension ladder extended to the ground. One end was connected to the ground while the other end disappeared into the clouds. It was as if there was no end to it. While they were talking, someone had already stepped onto the immortal ascension ladder. Then, more than 10 cultivators rushed up. Among them, Fengjiu saw that there were even immortal emperors. Young friend, I'll take my leave first. The old man cupped his fists at Fengjiu and said something to his clansmen. Then, he walked up the immortal ascension ladder. Ninth young lord, goodbye. Shu also cupped his fists and led his group up the immortal ascension ladder. Fengjiu watched them leave. Just as she was about to step forward, she caught a glimpse of a group of people coming over from the corner of her eye. She took a closer look and saw that the group was from the Xie clan. Xie Yin and his father, Old Master Xie, were among them. However, looking at the people in this group, they looked a little tired. It was obvious that the journey here had not been easy. Father, it seems like we came at the right time. The immortal ascension ladder has really appeared, Xie Yin said to his father. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a miserable scream was heard. A figure fell down from the immortal ascension ladder. His body was covered in blood, and he looked like he was on the verge of death. This scene shocked the people below. The expressions of the people from the other clans changed when they saw the miserable state of that person. Was this the result of not being able to climb the immortal ascension ladder? This was indeed fighting against the heavens, gambling with one's life. The faces of the Xie clan's people turned ugly when they saw this scene, because that person just happened to fall in front of them. Looking at the miserable state of that cultivator, Xie Yan's body trembled slightly. He looked at his father and said, "Father, I'll go up with you. Let's do what we can. As long as we feel that we can't go up anymore, we'll come down." Immortal Ascension Stairway. Actually, those who had climbed the Immortal Ascension Stairway before all knew that for every step after the 100th step, one's strength would change as well. However, after the 100th step, the Immortal Ascension Stairway was even more difficult to climb. Those who could not withstand the pressure would be knocked down. The clan wanted to recruit experts to assist them, yet they didn't dare to come personally. Hence, they could only send these branch family members with outstanding strength to take the risk. How could they not know that the Immortal Ascension Stairs was akin to the King of Hell's talisman? Careful with every step, he fell from the sky to hell. When he thought about how his father's goal was to fight against the heavens, he couldn't help but feel his heart tighten. He was afraid that his father would be like that cultivator who fell down the Immortal Ascension Stairs, going up alive only to come down on the verge of death. Old Master Xie sighed and looked at the Immortal Ascension Stairs. "I have tried climbing this Immortal Ascension Stairs before. The first 100 meters is safe. You could try the next 10 steps after that." He turned around and said in a deep voice, "Let's go. If you don't try, how do you know if you can do it?" Chapter 2739. It was a young man. He didn't look very old, but his red robe was extremely dazzling, and his temperament was incomparably noble. When he turned his head slightly to look at them, his handsome face that was like a celestial being was reflected in their eyes. When they saw him, they couldn't help but secretly praise, "What an outstanding young man." When they saw the young man looking at them, they nodded their heads slightly. Then they gathered their thoughts and walked up the Immortal Ascension Stairs. However, not long after they stepped onto the Immortal Ascension Stairs, they saw the handsome young man in red following behind them. His steps were leisurely and his expression was calm. His actions exuded a sense of laziness, and he didn't seem nervous at all. It was as if he wasn't walking up the Immortal Ascension Stairs, but rather, he was taking a stroll in his own backyard. "Father, that young man is coming up too," Xie Yin said to his father beside him. Old man Xie turned to look and said, "Strong cultivators tend to keep a low profile. Maybe this young man already has the qualifications to climb the Immortal Ascension Stairs. Those who are able to come up here are all extraordinary people. We can't treat them like normal people." Hearing this, Xie Yin calmed himself down and replied, "Yes. Wasn't that right?" Back then, who would have thought that the Fengjiu they met on the way here would be such a strong cultivator? That young man's appearance was obviously not outstanding. His green robes were also very low profile. His actions and words were like those of an ordinary child. However, time after time, that young man had exceeded everyone's expectations. Also, because of that young man, his son was able to obtain a divine beast at such a young age. Now, even if the father and son were not in the clan, they could rest easy. They walked forward. Every step they took felt like they were stepping on cotton. They had to gather their spiritual energy and use it to walk. Therefore, every step on the Immortal Ascension Stairs was not easy. Another cry of surprise was heard, and another figure fell from a high place. When the Xie father and son saw the figure rolling down the celestial staircase, they immediately dodged to the side to avoid being knocked down. As soon as the two of them dodged, they thought of the red-robed young man behind them and couldn't help but turn back to look. They saw that the red-robed young man was trying to step on the celestial staircase. With one step, he sank halfway down the staircase, then pulled himself out. When he stepped down again, they didn't know if it was a problem of strength or something else, but the red-robed young man's entire body sank in. He could only use his elbows to support himself. His entire body hung in the air and swayed. Just when they thought that the youth would fall down, they saw the youth move to the left and easily avoid the falling cultivator. Then, he climbed up from the cloud ladder and continued to climb up after steadying himself. Seeing this scene, whether it was the father and son of the Xie clan who were looking down from the celestial staircase or the cultivators who were standing guard below, ready to catch people if they fell, they were all dumbfounded. Why did it feel like this young man went up to play? That leisurely swaying figure, that footsteps that stopped every 3 steps, when would it come to an end? Chapter 2740. Why isn't he walking anymore? Maybe he can't go up? That's true. We can't see anything beyond the 100th step. The smoke there is thicker. I wonder what it's like beyond the 100th step. What can happen? Didn't you see those people fall down not long after they entered the 100th step staircase? He probably doesn't dare to go up. This young man has the guts to try the staircase at such a young age. It's already very impressive. Indeed, we can only watch from below. We don't even dare to try. Below, the cultivators who were looking up discussed among themselves. Looking at the dazzling red figure, they wondered why he had stopped moving forward. Fengjiu stopped because she saw the Xie father and son enter the 100th step. The old man's pace did not slow down. Xie Yin had only taken the 2nd step, but it was already difficult for him to continue. She saw his slightly raised steps tremble slightly. It was not a tremble of fear, but a tremble of muscles and bones due to his heavy footsteps. He had only taken 2 steps, but his clothes were already drenched in sweat. His breathing became heavy and chaotic. If you have too much obsession in your heart, this staircase won't be easy to walk. A faint voice entered Xie Yan's ears. He was startled and turned his head to look. He saw that the red-robed young man had unknowingly appeared behind him and was only 2 steps behind him. However, at this moment, he watched in astonishment as the young man strode over. Step by step, the young man easily arrived in front of him. With your cultivation, it shouldn't be a problem to reach 10 steps. Don't believe me? Let go of your obsession and try walking again. As Fengjiu spoke, she did not look at him. Instead, she walked up the staircase. Every step was light and easy, as if she was walking on flat ground. Xie Yin was shocked. However, what shocked him even more was that familiar voice. Fengjiu, you're Xiaojiu? It was clearly a different face, clearly a different outfit, clearly a different temperament, but this voice was so familiar. No, how could it be a different aura? That willful and arrogant aura. Wasn't it Fengjiu? When he was fighting against the Ruan clan, wasn't the aura of Zunhua similar to this? Fengjiu paused and looked at him from 10 steps away. It's me. Hearing his words, Xie Yin was overjoyed. Without doubting him, he dismissed the obsession in his heart and tried his best to restore his calm. When he took another step, his footsteps were no longer as heavy as before. However, as he walked up step by step, the powerful pressure and aura that spread out from the celestial staircase made it difficult for him to breathe. He was only at the 9th step. It seems that I won't be able to go up. He laughed bitterly as he knew that if he were to forcefully ascend the stairs, he would probably be injured by the pressure of the Heaven Tao and fall to the point of being on the verge of death. Fengjiu nodded slightly. It's already very good. You may leave. Your wife and children are waiting for you at home. Xie Yan's heart trembled. He looked at him deeply, then cupped his hands and bowed. Thank you. His wife and children were waiting for him at home. Not for anything else, but for his wife and children. Staying alive and returning home was the most important thing. Thinking of this, he cupped his hands and bowed to Fengjiu. He glanced at the celestial staircase, then turned and walked down. Chapter 2741. After a few steps, she stopped and looked up. She saw 2 cultivators about 10 steps away from her, waving their swords as if possessed. They kept shouting, "I'll kill you! I'll kill you!" Fierce auras flew in all directions and dissipated into the air. Some of the cultivators avoided them as they walked forward. Some of them could not dodge in time and were injured by the sword auras. She saw Old Master Xie standing at the top of the stairs about 30 steps away. He was staring ahead in a daze. She didn't know what he was thinking. Suddenly, he turned around and walked to the side. Seeing that the situation was a little strange, she quickly went forward. When Old Master Xie stepped into the air, she reached out and pulled him. "Old Master," Fengjiu called out. Her voice contained the power of a powerful cultivator. When it reached Old Master Xie's ears, his heart shook and he snapped out of his reverie. "You are." He looked at the young man in red who was pulling him and then at his own feet. His heart skipped a beat. "Old Master, be careful," Fengjiu said as she let go of his robe. "You are." "Fengjiu?" Old Master Xie heard the voice and felt that it was familiar. He could not help but ask hesitantly. However, when he saw the handsome face of a young man in red, he was uncertain. Fengjiu smiled. "It's me." Old Master Xie was stunned. He smiled. "I didn't expect it to be you. I really couldn't recognize you." It was as if he was a completely different person. If not for his voice, he would not have recognized him. "Old Master, are you going up the Immortal Ascension stairs too? Let's go together," Fengjiu said as he walked up the stairs. Old Master Xie was stunned for a moment and hurriedly followed. However, it was not easy for him to walk, and the higher he went, the more illusions seemed to be messing up his thoughts and state of mind. Suddenly, he looked in front of him, but Feng Ix's figure was gone. There was only a fierce tiger with its mouth wide open and pouncing on him. The ferocious aura, the sharp, bloodthirsty mouth, and the approaching danger made him cry out in alarm. He stumbled backward and rolled down a few steps. Fengjiu stood at the top and watched. His eyes flashed. In his opinion, Old Master Xie had fallen down the stairs because of his sudden cry of alarm. However, he did not know what he saw. She narrowed her eyes and looked at the stairs. It was said that illusions would appear on the stairs. However, she did not see anything. She did not know what the illusions were. Seeing the old man of the Xie family get up and walk up again, she didn't walk up. Instead, she stood there and waited for him. When he stopped in front of her and stopped to catch his breath, she asked, "Are you okay?" "Yes, I've walked this path before. However, I didn't expect to see illusions. It's fine. I can continue walking slowly," Old Master Xie said as he panted. After resting for a while, he continued walking. Fengjiu walked at a leisurely pace. She did not sweat at all. However, the old man beside her was sweating and his clothes were soaked. He gradually slowed down as if every step was strenuous. Chapter 2742. Old Master Xie couldn't get his foot on the stairs. He stared at the stairs in front of him for a long time before he finally sighed and retracted his foot. He looked at Feng Nine and said, "It seems that this is as far as I can go. I won't go up. I'll do my best." He paused and looked at Fengjiu. "There's still a long way to go. Be careful." "Okay," Fengjiu replied. Then, she turned around and continued walking. The old man behind Yi Futian saw that Yi Futian's steps were relaxed, and he did not stop at all. It was as if nothing could stop him. He watched as Yi Futian walked past the cultivators, and his figure gradually disappeared into the distance. He finally let out a sigh of relief and continued walking down the staircase. At this point, his state of mind seemed to have reached a new level. The spiritual energy in his body surged. It had to be said that even if he had not reached the top of the Immortal Ascension stairs, he had still gained something from this trip. Fengjiu walked up. The higher she went, the more she could not see the path ahead. She did not know how many more stairs there were. Since she had not reached the end, she continued walking. For some reason, she could not see the people in front of her or behind her. She could not hear any other sounds. It was as if she was the only one on this path. She walked slowly. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew. It was so strong that she could not open her eyes. She felt as if her body was about to be blown away. She steadied herself and stopped walking. Looking ahead, she could only see the gust of wind blowing in all directions. Then, the gust of wind brought with it a torrential rain. When the rain fell on her body, she felt as if she had been hit by a handful of stones. It was painful. The spiritual energy in her body seemed to be useless at this moment. She could not block out the attack of the wind and rain. She only knew that the rain fell on her body. Her black hair was wet and stuck to her cheeks. Her red robe was also wet and stuck to her body. Because her clothes were soaked, it was difficult for her to walk. However, she did not stop because the stairs behind her were disappearing at some point in time. It was as if she would fall down if she stopped. As a result, even though she was not moving very quickly, she continued to move forward step by step. After an unknown amount of time, the gale stopped, and so did the storm. What appeared was the scorching sun, as if the sun was right above her head. The scorching temperature had completely dried off the water on her clothes and hair, and the water vapor evaporated into the sky. Her clothes, which were originally wet and stuck to her body, were now dry. However, sweat had seeped out and dripped down. The sweat on her back had also soaked her clothes. She was extremely thirsty. When she reached out to take some water from her space to drink, she found that she could not get anything. She was only startled for a moment before continuing to walk forward. It was as if there was no night on this path. She seemed to have walked for a long time, but she still could not see the end. She had used up a lot of her energy, and her pace gradually slowed down. At this moment, the weather on the Immortal Ascension stairs changed again. Just a moment ago, the sun was shining so brightly that she could not open her eyes. The next moment, it was as if she had fallen into a world of ice and snow. Snowflakes fluttered and the cold wind whistled. Chapter 2743. She was stunned and stopped in her tracks. Her heart skipped a beat as she stared at her empty palm. Suddenly, she understood. If the heart is connected to the path of heaven, there is no need to fear the wind and snow blocking the path of immortality. As soon as she finished speaking, the drifting snow disappeared without a trace. Her surroundings seemed to have returned to their original state. She calmed herself down and looked at herself. She was still dressed in red, fluttering in the wind. There was not a speck of snow on her body. The tiredness and thirst she originally felt had all disappeared. It was as if they had just been an illusion and never appeared. Ninth young lord? Ninth young lord? Young friend? Young friend? Two voices sounded. She came back to her senses and looked forward. She saw the old man and his shoe standing about 10 meters away from her and calling out to her. When they saw her look up, they asked again, "Why are you up here? Aren't you here to watch the show? Why are you up here?" Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled. She walked forward and said, "I had nothing to do, so I came up here to take a look. Perhaps the scenery up here will be better." The sounds around her entered her ears. There were sounds of fighting behind her, as well as cries of surprise. In front of her, she could vaguely see a few figures walking slowly in the smoke. The old man and his shoe saw him walking up slowly, one step at a time. He looked relaxed. They couldn't help but feel surprised. When he came to their side, the old man looked at him and sighed. "Young friend, you really have hidden your strength." Fengjiu smiled and said, "I haven't reached the top yet. How do you know that I have hidden my strength?" She walked up and said, "Let's go." Seeing him walking up, the two of them paused for a moment before following him. They had already walked half the way up. The higher they went, the harder it was to walk, especially his shoe, who gradually began to feel uncomfortable. The aura in her body also began to become chaotic. Feeling that her body had reached its limit, his shoe stopped and said to them, "I've reached my limit. I'm afraid I can't take it anymore." Fengjiu and the old man glanced at him and nodded. They didn't say anything else and continued walking. Ishu walked down. "Little friend, don't you feel it?" The old man couldn't help but ask. Seeing that Fengjiu's expression was the same as before, without the slightest bit of discomfort, he couldn't help but feel strange. "There is." Fengjiu sighed softly. When the old man heard this, he stared at Fengjiu with glowing eyes and hurriedly asked, "How do you feel? Why is this road so long? How much more do we need to reach the peak?" Fengjiu said softly. There was a hint of helplessness in his voice. The old man was stunned and did not recover for a long time. After a long while, the old man took a deep breath and said, "I'm asking about your other feelings. Do you feel any discomfort? Can't you feel the pressure emanating from this staircase? Don't you feel the blood in your body boiling?" Fengjiu suddenly stopped in his tracks. After a moment of silence, he turned to the old man and said, "Not really. I just feel that this path is too long, and it's a bit difficult to climb up." As she spoke, she took out 2 fruits from her space and handed one to the old man. "Here, eat this to moisten your throat." The old man's lips moved, but he didn't know what to say. In the end, he just took the fruit, thanked her, and continued walking. Chapter 2744. She turned around to look, but all she could see was a vast expanse of white smoke. She could not see the old man or anyone else. Could it be that she had entered an illusion again? She thought to herself, but she did not think so. She was probably at the later stages of the stairway of immortality. There were probably not many people who had reached this stage. That old man must have already gone down, right? As she walked up, she thought to herself, according to the news, this stairway of immortality leads to another place. If I really go up, then her heart trembled at the thought. To be honest, her family and friends weren't here. She didn't want to leave alone and go somewhere else. But why did the Tianji elder ask her to come here? The stairway of immortality was here, and the golden lotus. No, it was the golden lotus. Could the golden lotus in her space pool be one of the ancient golden lotuses that Imo Chun had mentioned? She stopped in her tracks, as if she had understood something. Perhaps the golden lotus was the main reason she had come to the stairway of immortality? Even if she had really come here for the stairway of immortality, she had already come up. There was nothing special about it. She looked ahead and saw that the staircase was endless. She continued walking, and as time passed, she gradually got closer to the top. When she arrived at the end, she looked at the last staircase and the ethereal door behind it. She stopped and didn't take that final step. This is the top of the stairway of immortality? It's just SOSO. She murmured softly and glanced at the illusory door in front of her. Unfortunately, it was a vast expanse of whiteness, and she couldn't see anything. At this moment, she did not know that behind the door of immortality, where she could not see, there were a few figures sitting on the clouds, looking at Fengjiu, who was standing by the door of immortality. One of the old men stroked his beard, unable to hide his surprise. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that someone would be able to ascend the stairway of immortality this year? And such a young man at that. What a surprise. You're really old and blind. That's clearly a girl. How is she a young man? Although he looked like a child, he was the oldest among them. However, the higher one's cultivation was, the easier it was for him to stop at a certain age. Hence, he looked like a child. A woman? A beautiful woman beside him said. She stared at the red-clothed young man and carefully sized him up. In the end, she was slightly surprised. She smiled and said, "It's actually a woman. It seems that the one who came this year will eventually become my disciple." Ha ha ha! How many years has it been since such an outstanding cultivator has appeared? Now that there is such a rare one, and such a handsome young man at that, no matter what, this person should be under my tutelage. Don't fight with me. I want this girl. No, I want it. How can that be? I said first. That's because I could tell that she was a girl. Even if she wanted to join an immortal sect, she should have joined my sect. Chapter 2745. Hearing this, the few of them were startled and hurriedly looked to the other side of the door. They saw that the red-clothed youth looked around the door, then turned around and walked back. He actually walked down just like that. She's leaving? She's already on the immortal ascension stairs, but she's not coming up? One of the old men's eyes widened, and he stuttered. She doesn't know where this place is, right? Any cultivator should know that this is the only way to get to the top. Why did she leave? What's going on? He had been guarding this place for many years, but this was the first time he saw a cultivator walk up the immortal ascension stairs with a calm expression. She even stood there and looked around before turning around to leave. For a moment, the few old monsters were dumbfounded and forgot to react. They stared blankly as the figure disappeared from the other side of the door. She left just like that? They looked at each other in dismay. They had never encountered such a situation before. Among them, The childlike old monster immediately released his divine sense, and a voice that contained a powerful pressure also sounded. "Little girl, you're not coming up?" Fengjiu, who was walking down, was startled when she heard the voice. She turned around to look, but saw nothing. Hence, she continued walking down. "Little girl, I'm talking to you. Why aren't you coming up?" The old monster's voice was flustered and exasperated. This time, Fengjiu was sure that he was talking to her. However, she did not see where the person was. Hence, she turned around to look at the door and said, "I'm just coming up to take a look. I don't want to go over." Hearing this, the childlike old monster widened his eyes. Even the others widened their eyes in astonishment, their faces filled with disbelief. "Then what are you doing here? Are you playing with us?" The old monster said angrily. Fengjiu's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. "Us?" Obviously, behind that door, there was more than one powerful old monster cultivator. Hence, she said, "I just said that I'm just coming up to take a look. I didn't know that you were behind that door, so I'm not playing with you." The old monsters were speechless for a moment. They did not know what this little girl was thinking. Finally, one of them asked again, "What's your name?" "Fengjiu," she said, not bothering to hide it. "Fengjiu? We'll remember it." Hearing this, Fengjiu said goodbye. With that, she continued walking down the stairs. Seeing her gradually disappear into the distance, the old monsters did not say anything for a long time, until finally, one of them said, "We were happy for nothing. This woman is not a person. She'll come again." Another voice said, "You can't fight with me. I reserved Fengjiu." "What do you mean you've booked it? And, is, I, come, is, if you want to fight, wouldn't it be better to let her choose herself when she comes again in the future?" The childlike old monster said. He looked at the door and sighed. "It looks like this will be the end of this year." Chapter 2746. The atmosphere around them seemed to be a little different. Some cultivators had surrounded the old man's family. Among them, Hishu and the others were protecting the old man. The atmosphere seemed to be on the verge of exploding. Other than the few groups of people surrounding the old man and Hishu, some others had already left when they saw that the situation was not right. Xie, Old Master Xie, and the others from the Xie family stood nearby and watched. When they saw her come down, they happily walked over. She calmly retracted her gaze and slowly walked toward the dying old man. She saw that half of the old man's family members were also pointing their weapons at him. It seemed that they wanted to take advantage of the old man's injury to take his life. He fell down. Fengjiu raised her eyebrows, and her gaze fell on Ishu. "Ninth young lord, you came down?" Ishu was very happy to see him. "I was worried that you would fall down from above, but seeing that you're safe, I'm relieved." As he spoke, he remembered Fengjiu's question and hurriedly said, "Senior fell down." But when he fell, his family members were fighting among themselves. Some wanted to catch him, some tried to stop him. I couldn't stand it and reached out to help. I didn't expect these people to want to attack us. Hearing this, Fengjiu nodded. So that's how it was. Xiaojiu, Old Master Xie, and Xie Yin walked over with their people and stood beside her. "Why aren't you going back?" Fengjiu asked. After all, if the people here were to attack, there would be repercussions. Some of the families who understood this had already left, but they were still here. "We wanted to wait for you to come down safely before leaving," Xie Yin said. He looked at Fengjiu and asked worriedly, "Do you know them?" Fengjiu glanced at the dying old man and said, "He's all right." Her gaze swept past the surrounding cultivators, and she raised her eyebrows, asking, "You're not leaving?" Inexplicably, the cultivators felt uneasy when they saw the young man in red casually ask this question. It was as if they made the wrong choice. What awaited them would be a heart-chilling, killing intent. The aura of death was so strong that it caused their hearts to rise to their throats because of the young man's words. For a moment, they hesitated. "Brat, don't be a busybody." One of the old man's clansmen glared fiercely at Fengjiu and scolded. However, before he could finish his words, a beam of cold light shot out, and he fell to the ground with a groan. In the blink of an eye, the life of a peak immortal saint cultivator had ended just like that. The surroundings quieted down in an instant. No one said a word. They just quietly watched the scene with reverence. The cultivators who were originally surrounding them even retreated without leaving a trace and quickly fled into the distance. "Come back." One of the old man's clansmen's expression changed drastically. He couldn't help but retreat and stare at Fengjiu with alarm and horror. The dying old man couldn't help but sigh softly when he saw Fengjiu helping him. Little friend, you've brought trouble to yourself. Why do you have to do this?" He wasn't related to him. Why did he have to bring trouble to himself? Chapter 2747. The prerequisite for helping others was to have the ability to help and the ability to bear the consequences. Since she already had this condition, why should she just watch and not lend a helping hand? The path of cultivation, the path of the strong, was not to be cold-blooded and heartless, nor was it to be a bystander. Instead, it was to use strength to solve everything when necessary. This was the foundation of her cultivation and her original intention to become strong. It didn't matter if people said that she was meddling in other people's business or that she was a troublemaker. She didn't care about what others said. She only knew that when she wanted to do something and had the ability to do it, she would do it according to her heart. After hearing her words, the old man coughed twice. He clenched his fist and pressed it against the corner of his mouth, wiping away the blood that flowed out. He did not say anything else and only said, "Young friend, thank you." His voice was weak and powerless, and his face was as pale as a sheet of paper. He gave off the feeling of a candle in the wind, as if it would be extinguished at any moment. "I thought you had come down, but I didn't expect you to come down like this." She walked forward and squatted down beside him, reaching out to feel his pulse. "With your temperament and comprehension, you shouldn't have ended up like this." Hearing this, the old man only smiled weakly, as if he did not even have the strength to speak. His eyelids gradually closed. "Ancestor, ancestor! Ha 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 ha! This old fart is finally dead. Ha 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 ha!" Half of the cultivators saw this and laughed out loud, thinking that the old man would not be able to hold on. All of you shut up." The middle-aged man who was supporting the old man turned around and shouted angrily, "Once this old fart dies, the family will change. What's the use of you guarding him? Why don't you quickly abandon the darkness and join the light? When the fourth master ascends, you will naturally benefit greatly. Kill them and avenge the ancestor." The middle-aged man who was supporting the old man shouted. He put the old man down and rushed towards those people with his sword. When the others saw this, they also joined in the battle. In an instant, the originally peaceful group began to kill each other just like that. Fengjiu glanced at it and ignored it. She wasn't interested in participating in this kind of family infighting. However, this old man had accompanied her for a long time, so she couldn't bear to see him die like this. Thus, she took out a pill from her space and stuffed it into the mouth of the unconscious old man. Spiritual power surged from her palm to help the pill take effect. Ishu was slightly surprised when he saw this. That pill! He glanced at Fengjiu. He didn't expect him to give such a precious pill to the old man. What was even more unbelievable was that in less than half an hour, the old man, who was on the verge of death, gradually regained his balance. The unconscious old man slowly opened his eyes. "Little friend." The old man was startled. He looked at Fengjiu and felt that his body seemed a little different. His life is saved. However, after returning, he will likely need to cultivate for a period of time to adjust himself, Fengjiu said, clapping his hands as he stood up. Ishu saw the old man staring at Fengjiu in a daze and immediately said, "Just now, the 9th young lord gave you a level 6 pill. That is an absolute treasure grade inner core." Hearing this, the old man looked at Fengjiu in shock. "Little friend." Chapter 2748. When the old man saw them fighting, he glanced at them and said to Fengjiu, "They wouldn't dare to trouble you." He stood up with Ishu's help and bowed to Fengjiu. "Thank you for saving us. I'm Yi Huai, and I'll never forget it." Feng Nine didn't avoid his salute and didn't say anything more. She just turned to look at the father and son of the Xie family. Old Master, when are you going back? Hearing his words, Old Master Xie said, I'm preparing to leave too. What about you? When are you leaving? Tomorrow, she said. Shall we go together? Old Master Xie asked. Feng Jiu shook his head. No, I'm going to a different place. As he spoke, his expression changed, and his gaze shifted to the forest in the distance. The others noticed this and looked in the direction he was looking at, but they didn't see anything. They only saw the leaves in the distance, rustling silently. It's getting late. Let's rest here for a while and leave together tomorrow, Ishu said and looked at the Xie father and son. I haven't introduced myself. My surname is He, and my name is Shan Shu. May I know who you are? My surname is Xie, and my name is Shan Yen. This is my father, Xie Yen said, and made a simple introduction. Young friend, are you in trouble? The old man Yi Huai asked. After all, he had seen many things. The slight movement just now had attracted his attention. It's just a small problem. It's no big deal, Feng Jiu said. He did not take it to heart. The outcome of the battle was gradually decided. However, after those people were killed, the remaining 8 or 9 people were also covered in injuries and were in a very sorry state. They wiped their weapons clean and put them away before coming to the old man's side. When they saw that the old man's spiritual aura was much stronger than before, they could not help but be stunned. Patriarch, thanks to you, young friend, I'm fine now. The old man looked at Feng Jiu as he spoke. Hearing this, the 8 or 9 people immediately stepped forward and saluted Feng Jiu gratefully. Many thanks to young lord for saving our old ancestor. Your old ancestor has already thanked me. There's no need to thank me. Feng Jiu waved his hand and said. The few of them looked at him deeply. Some of them were familiar with medicine, and they had seen the patriarch's previous condition. Now that he could stand up and his breathing was stable, there was no danger to his life. It could be seen that he had extraordinary means. However, after saving their ancestor, he actually didn't ask for anything in return. This surprised them. How could there be such a person who saved others without asking for anything in return? The Yi clan, He clan, and Xie clan, along with Feng Jiu, sat together in a circle. Whether it was strength or numbers, these people were enough to shock others. When the people who were watching Feng Jiu in the dark saw them, they also disappeared quietly, as if they had never been there. In the night, everyone sat together and chatted. The 3 clans who were not close to each other in the first place became closer because of Feng Jiu's relationship. They also agreed to leave together. This night was considered peaceful. The people who were hiding in the dark did not appear, and they all had a good night's rest. The next morning, a few more people came and went up the immortal ascension stairs. Chapter 2749. I'll take my leave first. Everyone take care. She cupped her hands and said to them. Hearing this, old Master Xie and the others could not help but look at her. In the end, they only said, be careful on your way. There must be someone watching him in the dark. However, with his strength, he might not be afraid of those people. Feng Jiu smiled and nodded. Only then did she summon her flying sword and leave first. Not long after she left, the people who had been hiding in the forest also followed behind her on their flying swords. Ishu felt the aura in the air in the forest and could not help but feel worried. Those people seemed to be very strong. I wonder if the 9th young lord can handle them? He should be fine, Xie Yin said. When he saw them looking at him, he smiled and said, you don't know how strong he is. I think those who have their eyes on him will only end up being defeated and killed. Brother Xie and the 9th young lord seemed to be very familiar with each other. Hishu looked at them curiously. Ha ha, this is a long story. Xie Yin laughed softly and said, we can talk along the way. Very well. Thus, the 3 groups left together and headed back to where they came from. Meanwhile, somewhere in the forest, Feng Jiu, who was flying on her flying sword, stopped. She sat on a big tree and looked at the dozen cultivators who were chasing after her. You guys actually chased me all the way here. You guys really don't give up. She sat on a branch with one leg stretched out and the other bent slightly. She casually placed one hand on her bent knee and played with a leaf with the other. Her clear eyes were indifferent and cold. Her slightly curved lips revealed a trace of a smile, which made her look even more demonic and languid. She sat on the tree like this and watched as the 17 or 18 cultivators surrounded her. Fengjiu, hand over the ancient green lotus. Among them, 2 cultivators who were immortal venerables stared at her fiercely and shouted in a deep and cold voice. Fengjiu's gaze swept across the cultivators. Her gaze paused on one of them for a moment, and then she chuckled. You want the ancient green lotus? That will depend on whether you have the ability or not. As soon as she finished speaking, the green leaf that she was playing with between her fingers flew out like a hidden weapon and hit the arm of one of the cultivators. Immediately after, she jumped up and rushed forward. The azure edge sword suddenly appeared in her hand, and with a sharp sword she took the life of one of the cultivators at an extremely fast speed. The moment the cold light flashed, a cultivator fell to the ground. There were no wounds on his body. Only an extremely thin line of blood seeped out from his neck. Seeing that she had killed a cultivator in an instant, the other cultivators quickly drew their swords. For a moment, saber light and sword shadows, killing intent and powerful pressure surged, causing the atmosphere in the forest to become oppressive. Swish! Yes! The green-tipped sword slashed across, causing blood to splatter on the ground. An arm flew out and fell into the grass. The immortal venerable let out a muffled groan and retreated rapidly. His footsteps swayed slightly, and he almost lost his balance. The immortal venerable clutched his severed arm as warm blood seeped out from his palm. The strong smell of blood rushed into his nose. His eyes were gloomy, and a ferocious and bloodthirsty expression appeared on his face as he spoke word by word. Chapter 2750. More than a dozen cold sword cheese intertwined to form a giant net that surrounded Fengjiu. The powerful sword cheese whistled through the air and instantly cut down the surrounding trees. With Fengjiu as the center, even the trees within 10 meters were cut down by the powerful sword cheese. Within 50 meters, branches and leaves swirled in the air. The lush forest seemed to have been razed to the ground in an instant. The lush trees fell to the side, revealing the blue sky and the morning sun. When the sunlight and the cold light of the sharp swords refracted, the sword cheese that burst out from the intertwining light made it even harder for people to see clearly. However, in this powerful sword net, where the dozens of sharp swords were pointed, Fengjiu, dressed in red, exuded a powerful pressure. Her spiritual energy aura spread out from her body like a whirlpool that twined around her, blocking the sword cheese outside of the whirlpool and preventing them from hurting her. He let out a whistling sound in the airflow, her black hair flying. She raised a long sword in her hand, and the powerful airflow from the Qingfeng's sword was like a wave in the sea. Accompanied by a sharp and cold shout, she slashed down in an instant, breaking the intertwined sword net. Whoosh! Bang! The sharp chi flow burst out like a twisting dragon, causing the surrounding sword cheese to roll over and scatter in all directions. The aura of an expert from her body was also released with the slash of her sword. It was no longer the pressure and aura of an immortal emperor, but the pressure and aura of a divine realm expert. Once this pressure and aura was released, the dozens of cultivators instantly felt like Mount Tai was pressing down on them. With a loud bang, they fell heavily to the ground and were unable to stand up. Hiss! Screams of pain and misery rang out at this moment. The dozen or so cultivators were stuck to the ground. It was as if there was a huge magnet sucking them in, preventing them from leaving the ground. If that was all, it would be fine. However, there's also a powerful force pressing down on them. It was as if a mountain was pressing down on them, crushing every part of their bodies. The pain caused them to scream again and again. Puffed. Some of them couldn't bear it and spurted out a mouthful of blood. Their internal organs felt like they were being crushed. The qi and blood in their body were rolling, but they couldn't break free from the powerful pressure and aura. They looked at Fengjiu in disbelief. Their eyes were filled with unconcealable shock and horror. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they wouldn't believe that Fengjiu, who had just advanced to the immortal Emperor realm not long ago, was already a divine realm expert today. This kind of strength was enough to make them look up to him. Just a gaze, just a pressure, was enough to crush them and consign them to eternal damnation. Even if there were twice as many of them, they wouldn't have dared to ambush her. Compared to their astonishment, Fengjiu indifferently walked forward and stopped in front of the two immortal venerables. Looking at the two immortal venerables who were suppressed by her aura, she narrowed her eyes and said, "After following me all the way, I'm really curious. Where did you two come from?" Chapter 2751. Is that so? Fengjiu curled her lips into a smile and suddenly squatted down. Her fingers moved slightly, and a silver needle flashed under the sunlight, causing people to shudder. "What are you doing?" The cultivator shouted. Seeing that the situation was getting worse, he gritted his teeth. He was thinking of using his primordial spirit to escape, but who knew that when the silver needle pierced his body, the spiritual aura in his body seemed to disappear in an instant. His entire body went limp, and his spiritual aura also disappeared. After the silver needle pierced his body, Fengjiu was no longer in a hurry to ask. Instead, she looked at the other cultivators. When those cultivators saw her gaze, their hair stood on end. The murderous intent in her eyes was so clear that it made them feel extreme danger. "Did you all take poison?" Fengjiu said slowly. Her voice carried a bit of carelessness. "So you decided to sacrifice your lives for your master just like that? To be able to poison your body? I think your master is not much." Hearing her words, the cultivator's eyes flashed, but they did not say anything. Until, when they heard her next sentence, their hearts suddenly trembled. "If I say that I can cure the poison in your body, will you still be loyal to your master?" Her lips curled as she asked gently. Seeing their shocked and incredulous gazes, Fengjiu said, "Don't doubt my ability. You should know that I am the ghost doctor. As long as I want, there is no poison in this world that I cannot cure." It has to be said that her words moved their hearts. If it was possible, just as this thought surfaced in his mind, the clouds in the sky churned and bolts of heavenly lightning struck down. For a moment, screams spread throughout the forest, and the smell of burnt flesh filled the air with a breeze. This scene made Fengjiu, who was retreating, frown slightly. Heavenly Tao execution? Looking at the dozen or so charred corpses, she suddenly muttered, "So that's how it is." Even if these people were controlled by poison, at the same time, they also swore an oath to the heavens. If they had any thoughts of betrayal, the heavenly Tao would kill them. It had to be said that after cultivating for so long, this was the first time she had seen the heavenly Tao kill traitors. No wonder some people wanted them to swear an oath to the heavenly Tao when they wanted them to be loyal. With such an oath, no matter where they were, as long as they were betrayed, even if their master didn't kill them, they would still die. It seems that if I want to get information about the person behind these people, I will have to find another way. She murmured, feeling that it was a pity. It wasn't easy to attract the attention of those people to her, and to keep the danger away from her family and friends. If she went back now, those people would probably find her again and link her to them. When she thought of this, she couldn't help but sigh softly. She walked up and picked up the interspatial rings on their bodies before walking away. As she walked in the forest, she couldn't help but think about the time. Her brother had brought Feng Yi and the others back. They should be home soon, right? She wondered how happy grandfather and the others would be when they saw Feng Yi return home. When she thought of this, she couldn't help but smile. Nothing could compare to a family reunion. She thought that their family would be very happy. It was a pity that she couldn't go back. Otherwise, she would really want to share this joy with them. Chapter 2752. She stood there quietly as she pondered. Looking at this unfamiliar place without a single family or friend, she suddenly wanted to return to the side of her family and friends. After standing there quietly for a long time, she took out the teleportation scroll from her space. This was the teleportation scroll that she had tricked the old man into giving her. There was no record of Punglai Immortal Island on it, so she could not use the teleportation scroll from 100 Rivers City to come here. However, she could use the teleportation scroll to return to 100 River City. She lowered her head and raised her hand. Looking at the conspicuous red clothes on her body, she thought to herself, even if I want to go back, I can't go back so conspicuously. Thus, she flashed into her space and cleaned herself up from head to toe. In her space, she wore a set of tattered beggar's clothes. Her face was also disguised to look ordinary and unremarkable. She looked dirty from head to toe, and her shoes had a few holes, revealing 2 of her little toes. She looked at her appearance and smiled inexplicably. Back then, it was this outfit that had pestered Mose. She had also used this outfit to wander around. Now, she felt that this outfit was the most unremarkable and most suitable for her to move around. However, if she left like this, they would probably go there to look for her again. She had to think of a way to blur their line of sight. Thus, she thought of puppets. Walking to the corner where a wooden box was placed, she rummaged through it and found a book on puppetry. She sat down cross-legged and flipped through it, earnestly learning the puppetry techniques inside. 3 days later, she made 10 scarecrows and wrapped a strand of her hair around each scarecrow. Then, she inserted a strand of her divine sense into them, using the shape as an illusion, transform. Following her clear shout, one of the scarecrows flashed with light, and in the next moment, a young man wearing a red robe who looked exactly like her appeared in front of her, blinking his eyes as he looked at her. This was the first time she had seen herself transformed using puppetry techniques. She could not help but be stunned for a moment. She only felt that it was very similar. Perhaps even Mose and the others would not be able to recognize that this was a puppet and an illusion. Listen to this sentence. Fengjiu smiled and said to the person in front of him, "What are you talking about? What's the point of talking to yourself?" The red-clothed puppet choked Fengjiu. It was almost an instinctive response. Fengjiu was stunned for a moment before he chuckled. Good. That's how it is. It's pretty good." With these puppets in her original form, those people would definitely think that she was still on Punglai Immortal Island. During this period of time, she could do whatever she wanted without worry. Thus, she arranged her puppets. Because of her divine sense and hair, she could control their actions and words. After arranging everything, she took out the teleportation wheel and silently thought of a forest outside 100 River City. With a thought, a light flashed as she disappeared on the spot. In the afternoon, there was a cool breeze blowing in the forest. Walking in the forest, because of the trees covering their heads, it was less hot and more cool. A light breeze brushed past, and the birds on the branches chirped. It seemed to be a little peaceful and also a little cozy. Chapter 2753. After entering the city gate, Fengjiu couldn't help but think, I wonder what they're doing? Is Mose in the mansion? Or is he in the building? If they suddenly saw her, would they be pleasantly surprised? No, with her current attire and disguise, it would be difficult for them to recognize her. However, just as she was walking in the direction of the Heavenly Pill building, she unexpectedly saw a familiar figure. Hui Lang? What was he doing there? She paused her steps and looked at Hui Lang, who had entered the pastry shop not long ago and came out with a few boxes of pastries. She was slightly surprised and thought to herself, could it be that Mose wants to eat pastries? Thinking about it, she felt that it wasn't possible. Mose didn't like sweet things very much. At most, he would eat 1 or 2 pieces occasionally, but he wouldn't buy a few boxes at once. Therefore, she followed behind at a moderate pace, thinking that Hui Lang would go to the Heavenly Pill building or return to the mansion. However, she didn't expect to see Hui Lang enter a restaurant. She was slightly startled. She walked to a corner of the restaurant and sat down while looking towards the second floor of the restaurant. With this glance, she saw the 2 people sitting on the second floor. When she saw them, She couldn't help but be stunned, and for a moment, she didn't know what to think. The two people sitting by the window, one of them was wearing a luxurious and low-key black robe. It was Xianyuan Mo's without a doubt. Sitting opposite him was a woman in white. She stared at the woman in white in a daze. She only felt that the woman in white's side profile was extremely beautiful. She sat there, and the aura around her seemed extremely gentle and elegant. The woman was talking about something, and there was a faint smile on her face. Her eyes were fixed on Xianyuan Mo's in front of her. Xianyuan Mo's nodded occasionally. He didn't seem to say much and just held his wine cup and sipped his wine. Seeing the two people sitting there chatting and eating, she couldn't help but lower her head. Looking at the beggar's clothes on her body, she couldn't help but smile bitterly. She really knew how to pick clothes. She had picked the dirtiest and most tattered one. Normally speaking, if she came back to give her loved one a surprise, she should appear in her most beautiful state, but she had to appear in her dirtiest and ugliest state. If it was just a mosaic alone, it would be fine, but a woman dressed in white appeared out of nowhere, causing her to lose all thoughts of going forward. With the depth of Moses' feelings for her, she naturally wasn't worried that he would fall in love with another woman. However, seeing him sitting with another woman and chatting away as soon as she returned, she really didn't feel good. Yes, she was jealous. Although this jealousy was inexplicable, she was still jealous. She wished that other than her, there was no other woman by his side. In her opinion, men should not have too many female confidants. As the saying goes, love grows with time. Even if he was boring, he was so outstanding. Who knew if his female confidants were boring? But when she thought about it this way, she felt that she had gone too far. She didn't have many female friends by her side, but whether it was her subordinates or friends, most of them were men. Furthermore, she didn't say anything to them and deliberately kept a distance. Sometimes, when he wasn't by her side, she would often drink and chat alone with the people by her side until dawn. Chapter 2754. Meanwhile, upstairs, Hui Lang carried a few boxes of pastries and placed them on the table. He smiled and said, "Miss Yin, these are pastries from the best pastry shop in the city. When the ghost doctor was here, she also loved to eat pastries from this shop. Try it and see how it tastes." Mose, who was drinking wine, paused for a moment when he heard Hui Lang mention the ghost doctor. He glanced at the pastries. That's right, a Jew also liked to eat pastries from this shop. He wondered how she was doing over there. Originally, she said that she would get someone to send some news back after she left to let him know that she was safe. However, who knew that after she left, it was as if she had disappeared without a trace. There was not the slightest bit of news about her. Moses' absent-mindedness attracted the attention of the woman in white. The woman's beautiful eyes looked at Mose with a smile. Then, she opened the box of pastries and picked up a pastry to eat. The pastry that melted in her mouth was slightly cold. She smiled slightly and said to Hui Lang, "Thank you, Hui Lang. This pastry is really delicious." As she spoke, her slender, jade-like hand picked up a pastry and handed it to Mose. "Senior, try it." Moses' gaze flickered as he looked at the pastry in front of him. He took it and took a bite. It was cold and melted in his mouth. It was very special, and the most special thing was that the shape of the pastry was very interesting. This is mung bean flavored. There seems to be mint added to it. It tastes cool and refreshing. It's very suitable to eat in hot weather. The woman in white spoke gently and tasted another pastry. Then she said to Hui Lang, "Hui Lang, these are for you to eat. I'll keep the other boxes for Lung Shuang and the others to eat." She opened the box of pastries and handed it over to him. "This?" Hui Lang looked at his master. Seeing that he did not say anything, he took it. "Thank you, Miss Yen. I should be the one thanking you," the woman in white said with a smile. She looked at Xianyuan Mose and said, "Senior, let's go back. I'm afraid I'll hold you up if I'm out for too long." Xianyuan Mose nodded, then stood up. When he inadvertently looked down at the street below, he couldn't take his eyes off of a figure that inexplicably caught his attention. The woman in white and Hui Lang followed his gaze and saw a little beggar sitting diagonally across the restaurant. The woman in white didn't understand and only asked, "Senior brother, what's wrong?" Huilang took a look and knew what was going on. It turned out that Master was thinking of the ghost doctor. That's right, the ghost doctor left for so long without any news. It would be strange if Master didn't miss her. "I'm fine. Let's go." She was currently at the Penglai Immortal Island. How could she possibly appear here? Moreover, not every little beggar was as a Jew's. Seeing that he went downstairs first, the woman in white and Huilang followed his footsteps. When the three of them left the restaurant, they were supposed to go to another street. However, Mose, who was walking in front, looked at the little beggar again. His footsteps also strode over. Fengjiu lowered her head and leaned against the wall behind her. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw a pair of black boots walking towards her. A light flashed through her lowered eyes. This light flashed for a moment, so fast that it was unnoticeable. Clang! Chapter 2755. Master, this little beggar is overjoyed. He doesn't even know how to thank you for 1 gold coin. Huilang laughed at the side. Seeing that the little beggar was still staring at his master, he couldn't help but grin. This little beggar was also lucky. It was rare for his master to be so kind. If it was any other time, his master wouldn't have noticed such a little beggar. It was probably because he thought of the ghost doctor when he saw the little beggar. "Master, did you think of the ghost doctor when you saw this little beggar?" Huilang asked from the side. When the white-clothed woman heard this, she looked at the little beggar seriously and asked, "Does the ghost doctor look like this little beggar?" She heard that the ghost doctor was extremely beautiful, but why did senior brother think of the ghost doctor when he saw this little beggar? Could it be that these two people were similar in some way? When Huilang heard the white-clothed woman's words, he grinned and laughed. Seeing that the little beggar was staring blankly at his master, he said, "This little beggar's eyes are dull, like a dead fish's eyes. How could they be similar to the ghost doctor? My master was just thinking of—" "Shut up." Xinyuan Mose frowned slightly and glanced at him. He didn't look at the little beggar sitting on the ground again. Instead, he turned around and left with a flick of his sleeves. He knew that Fengjiu wouldn't appear here, much less in this kind of disguise. He walked over unconsciously only because he remembered the first time he met Fengjiu. At that time, when he saw the little beggar sitting in the corner, when he threw down a piece of silver from his waist, the little beggar raised his head. He would never forget that pair of startled and clever eyes. And the little beggar he met today, although he was also thin and small, just as Huilang said, his eyes were dull and lifeless. The startled look in his eyes seemed to be because he saw the gold coin. He didn't find a trace of familiarity in that pair of eyes. Naturally, that little beggar couldn't be his Agio. Most importantly, he knew that his Agio was now on Penglai Immortal Island and couldn't appear here. Seeing the three of them walk away, the corner of Fengjiu's mouth twitched. Dead fish eyes? Huilang was itching for a beating. She looked at the gold coin in the broken bowl and couldn't help but smile bitterly. He actually gave her money again? But this time, he didn't recognize her. Why was that? Was it because her beggar disguise was too realistic? Their eyes met, but he couldn't recognize her. She had to admit that this made her feel a little uncomfortable. Even if she deliberately hid the look in her eyes, even if she deliberately pretended not to know him, she still hoped that he would be able to recognize her. A woman's heart was full of contradictions. She would always find trouble for herself. She sighed and picked up the gold coin in the bowl and played with it in her hand. Suddenly, she saw a few beggars surrounding her. Each of them held a stick in their hands and stared at her fiercely. Do what? She leaned lazily against the wall. Her mood was gloomy, and she didn't have the mood to pay attention to these people. Kid, this territory is ours. Do you know that? One of the beggars shouted and stared at the gold coin in Fengjiu's hand. Hearing this, she sneered. This is clearly the main street. And if I remember correctly, this entire street belongs to the Yang family, right? How did the Yang family's place become your territory? Chapter 2756. Seeing that Mo Zhe and the other two had already walked far away, Fengjiu picked up the broken bowl and tree branch and ran into the alley. When the beggars saw this, they immediately chased after him. "Stinky brat, don't run!" They shouted and chased into the alley, but they saw that the little beggar did not run anymore. Instead, he leaned against the wall and waited for them. Seeing this, the beggars coldly snorted. "Why aren't you running anymore? If you have the guts, run again." Fengjiu held the tree branch in her hand and gently patted it. Seeing the beggars walk over, she gently smiled. "If you run, how will I break your dog legs? Stinky brat." The beggars loudly cursed and rushed forward. However, Fengjiu, who had been leaning against the wall, also moved at this time. She flashed forward and used the tree branch in her hand to strike their feet. Only the sound of bones breaking could be heard, and one of the beggars screamed and fell down. "You want to be a beggar with good hands and feet? Since you want to be a beggar, then I'll help you." Crack! Ah! The screams and the sounds of bones breaking could be heard at the same time. However, in the next moment, Fengjiu took out silver needles and stabbed them into their mute acupoints. Those beggars opened their mouths wide, but they could no longer make a sound. She put away the silver needles and held the broken bowl in one hand and the tree branch in the other. Without even looking at the beggars on the ground, she walked out, leaving behind the terrified beggars in the alley. Returning to the main street, she looked at the people coming and going on the main street. Thinking about it, she decided not to go back first. She would first find someone to ask who the white-clothed woman was. Thus, she first wandered around the city, planning to return to the Heavenly Pill building to ask Leng Hua about the situation. On the other side, Xin Yuan Mose went to the Heavenly Pill building, and Hui Lang sent the white-clothed woman back to the Feng Manor. On the way back to the Feng Manor, the white-clothed woman casually asked, "Hui Lang, why did you say that senior brother thought of the ghost doctor when he saw the little beggar? Could it be that the two of them are similar in some way?" "Hee, it's not that they look alike, it's just that." Hui Lang paused mid-sentence and said embarrassedly, "Miss Yin, I'm sorry. I can't talk too much about this matter between Master and the ghost doctor. Master doesn't like me to talk too much." Hearing this, the woman in white smiled gently. "It's all right. I shouldn't be curious." Seeing that they were about to reach the Feng Manor's gates, she said to Hui Lang, "We've reached the Manor's gates. Go back to senior brother's side. I'll go on myself." "All right then, Miss Yin, please go in and rest. I'll go back to my master's side first," Hui Lang said, then turned around and left. After the white-clothed woman watched him leave, she went up and knocked on the door. After the person inside opened the door, she entered the manor. She didn't go straight to the backyard. Instead, she asked, "Where's Leng Shuang?" "Miss Leng Shuang is in the backyard with the little master," the servant said. Hearing this, the white-clothed woman went to the backyard. When she arrived outside Leng Shuang's courtyard, she saw that Leng Shuang and Bai Qingcheng were both inside with the child, so she went in. "You're all here." She walked in with light steps and said with a smile, "Just now, senior brother took me to a restaurant to eat some food. When he heard that I wanted to eat pastries, Hui Lang went to buy some for me. He said that it was the best pastry shop in the city. In the past, the ghost doctor also liked to eat the pastries there, so I brought some back for you." Chapter 2757. She saw a well-behaved baby sleeping on the soft bed. That delicate face, that cute and innocent sleeping face, made her smile involuntarily. "This child is so cute." Leng Shuang blocked her line of sight and coldly said, "Since Miss Yun is a guest, it would be best if you did not wander around the manor. After all, this is the Feng Manor. Not every place is a place where guests can go. We won't eat the pastries. Miss Yin, please go back." Bai Qingsheng also spoke up from the side. Her expression was indifferent. It was clear that she was the same as Leng Shuang. She did not have a good impression of the person living in the Feng Manor. Hearing this, the woman in white faintly smiled as if she did not care. "All right, then I will go back first." After saying this, She did not stay any longer and turned to leave. Seeing her leave, Bai Qingchang hesitated for a moment before asking, "Lung Shuang, master still has not returned. That Miss Yin has been at the Yama Lord's side this entire time. Could something have happened?" Ever since the woman surnamed Yun had arrived, even if they treated her coldly, she had always maintained a gentle and indifferent appearance. Although she did not have the slightest bit of a dangerous aura, she still made her feel uneasy at times. Worried that the Yama Lord will take a fancy to her, Lung Shuang asked expressionlessly. Glancing at Bai Qingchang, he said, "The Yama Lord only has master in his eyes. Other women do not have a chance. Although she often walks around the Yama Lord, she does not dare reveal any other thoughts. As long as she has any thoughts, even if master has not returned, the Yama Lord will send her away." She did not find this woman pleasing to the eye because it was as if she was wearing a perfect mask. She was always neither warm nor angry. Even if they treated her coldly, she would always maintain a smile with an indifferent expression, thinking of how her master was not in the manor. Yet this woman did not live in the Ling manor and came to live in the Feng manor. Furthermore, she did not have the slightest awareness of being a guest. Hearing this, Bai Qingchang finally calmed down and said, "Then I will go to the front and take a look. The young master is asleep. Bring him into the room to sleep." "Yes," Lung Shuang replied. After watching her leave, she carried the sleeping baby into the room. After placing the baby on the bed, she sat by the bed and cultivated. When a master was not at home, she was in charge of taking care of the little master. Occasionally, Lord Yin would come to visit the child, but he would leave after a short while. As for the woman with the surname Yin, she would not let her get close to the child. She walked all the way to the courtyard and returned to her room in the small courtyard. As soon as the door closed, the smile on the white-clothed woman's face disappeared. She sat at the table and poured herself a cup of tea. Her beautiful eyes were cold and sharp. Where was her original gentle and amiable appearance? On the other side, in the heavenly pill building, Xianyuan Mose was resting on a soft couch in the attic with his eyes closed. When he heard someone knocking on the door, he called out, "Come in." "Yama Lord." Lung Hua walked in. Xianyuan Mose opened his eyes and looked at Lung Hua, asking, "Has her master sent back any news?" Lung Hua shook his head. Not yet. He did not know how many times the Yama Lord had asked, but there was still no news. Chapter 2758. Yama Lord, do not worry. Everything is normal. Lung Hua stood with his eyes downcast as he spoke in a warm voice. "Go do what you need to do. If there is anything in the building that cannot be resolved, you can tell me immediately," he said in a low voice. "Yes, then I will leave first," Lung Hua said. He saluted and was about to leave when he heard his voice once again. "If there is any news of your master, you must tell me." Xianyuan Mose opened his eyes and looked at him. His voice was low and his gaze was deep. This made Lung Hua unable to help but lower his head. "Yes," he replied before turning to leave. Xianyuan Mose lay there for a while. Only in the evening did he leave and head towards the Feng manor. On the streets, he saw a child playing with a rattle drum. He had Hui Lang by it. Entering the Feng manor, he walked towards the main hall. At the same time, he said to Hui Lang behind him, "Have Lung Shuang bring the child over." "Yes," Hui Lang replied before walking towards Lung Shuang's courtyard. In the inner courtyard, the woman in white, who had heard Xianyuan Mo's return, continued to sit and read. She did not go over to him because he had returned, nor did she want to constantly walk in front of him. This was because she knew that for someone like Xianyuan Mo's, if she really did that sort of thing, he would be annoyed very quickly. When that time came, he would not care if she was his junior sister or not, and let her stay. Lung Shuang carried the child into the hall. Hui Lang followed at his side. When they reached the front, she saluted, "Greetings, Yama Lord. Bring the child over," Xianyuan Mose said as his gaze landed on the little thing in Lung Shuang's arms. "Yes," Lung Shuang replied. He carried the child forward, handed him over, and then retreated to the side. Xianyuan Mose took the soft child and held him carefully in his arms. He thought to himself, their child will be so small and soft in the future. Now that I have such a child to take care of, perhaps it will be much easier to take care of him in the future. Thinking of this, the corners of his lips could not help but curl up slightly, revealing a smile. Looking at the child's exquisite face, he thought that his and a Jew's child would definitely be even more beautiful than this child. However, did their child look more like him? Or was she more like a Jew? Little thing, look at what this is. He took out the small rattle drum and gently spun it in his hand. The two dangling beads swayed along with the drum and fell onto the surface of the drum, producing a clear pong-pong-pong sound. The child was attracted by the sound. His pair of black eyes could not help but look at the little thing that was spinning in front of him. Suddenly, he grinned and danced with joy. The child's joy amused Xin Yuanmos. He chuckled and played with the child while asking, "Has this little thing eaten?" Replying to Yama Lord, "The little master just woke up not long ago and is about to feed him," Lung Shuang said from the side. Ask someone to send the food here. I will feed him." He didn't even raise his head as he spoke. What he didn't know was that Grey Wolf and Lung Shuang were both stunned by his words. After all, their master had never done such a thing in the past. Moreover, would a man like him know how to feed a child? However, Lung Shuang was only stunned for a moment before he responded and walked out. On the other side, as the sky gradually darkened, Fengjiu also jumped into the heavenly pill building from the backyard. As soon as he landed, he heard a cold shout. Chapter 2759. Following the cold shout, more than a dozen people instantly surrounded her. Looking at the swords and sabers, Fengjiu was stunned for a moment. Then, she chuckled. "You're quite vigilant. I was thinking of coming back quietly." Hearing this, more than a dozen people were stunned. They looked at the little beggar in front of them in astonishment and asked hesitantly, "Mas, Master?" "Yes, it's me," Fengjiu said. She looked at their stunned faces with a smile and asked, "Where Du Fan and Lung Hua?" Hearing that the voice was indeed their master's, more than a dozen people immediately put away their swords and sabers and bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Master. Please forgive us for offending you." "It's fine." Fengjiu waved her hand. It was good to be vigilant. One of them said, "Du Fan and Lung Hua are counting in front. I'll ask them to come over." "There's no need," Fengjiu said. She walked forward and ordered, "Tell them that the news of my return is not to be leaked out of the heavenly pill house." More than a dozen people were stunned. They couldn't help but ask, "What about Yama Lord and the others?" "Yama Lord came over in the afternoon." Fengjiu stopped in her tracks and said, "We'll talk about this after I see Du Fan and Lung Hua." "Yes," they replied and watched her walk forward. Then they retreated into the shadows. Du Fan and Lung Hua, who were counting in front, were also stunned when they heard the secret guard say that their master had returned. When they walked to the backyard, they saw a little beggar walk in. After looking at her, they hesitated. "Master?" Her clothes looked familiar, but her appearance seemed to be... "Yes, come to the attic. I have something to ask you," Fengjiu said. Her gaze swept across the attic. Because the door was closed, they were the only people in the attic. When the two of them heard her voice, they looked at each other and smiled. "Yes." Then they followed her to the attic. Sitting at the table in the attic, Fengjiu poured himself a cup of tea and asked, "What's the background of the woman beside Mose? Why are you following him?" Hearing this, the two of them were slightly surprised. "Master has met? We met on the way back." She took a sip of tea and said. Hearing this, Du Fan and Lung Hua looked at each other and thought to themselves, "Looks like Master is jealous." Was that why the Yama Lord didn't know that she was back? "Go ahead." Du Fan nudged Lung Hua with his elbow. Lung Hua looked at him, then said to Fengjiu, "Master, this woman's surname is Yun, and her name is Shuaxin. She came to 100 Rivers City a month ago. At that time, she came directly to the Heavenly Pill building to find the Yama Lord. She said that she was the Yama Lord's junior sister. At that time, I heard Huilang mention that Yun Shueshin took a letter from the Yama Lord's master and gave it to the Yama Lord. She said that she asked him to take care of her. The Yama Lord originally wanted her to live in the Ling residence, but she said that she heard about the Feng residence on the way here. She said that the Feng residence was more lively, so she wanted to live in the Feng residence. The Yama Lord allowed her to do as she pleased. Now, she is living in our residence. After that, I asked me to investigate her background, but I couldn't find any information about her. Thus, we deduced that she was either a member of a hidden family or someone from overseas. However, Yin Shueshin never mentioned where she came from. Hearing this, Feng Jiu nodded. So it's like that. Chapter 2760. You can't even find out the background of the person who moved into our house. Your intelligence is not good enough. She tapped her hand lightly on the table, making a knocking sound. Her clear eyes fell on the two of them. Master, please forgive us. The two of them lowered their heads slightly. We will continue to investigate. We will definitely find out where she came from. With that, Lung Hua paused for a moment and said, Master, the Yama Lord came over this afternoon. He asked if you had sent any news back. He also said that if there was any news about you, we must inform him immediately. There's no hurry. I will deal with this matter. Just do what you usually do. Pretend that I never came back. Feng Jiu said, then added, I came back this time because I don't want anyone to know that the person who attacked me is still watching me. If those people know that I'm back, they will probably follow me. Hearing this, the two of them were slightly startled. So, Master doesn't plan to reveal your identity and return to the residence? If she revealed her identity and returned to the residence, there were many people in the residence. Furthermore, there was Yun Shueshin, whose background was unknown. Wouldn't the news of her return spread easily? However, if she didn't reveal her identity, then what identity would she use to return to the residence? I originally wanted to come back quietly for a while, but now there's Yun Shueshin in the residence. It seems that I have to make another plan. Let me think about what to do. She sighed softly with a helpless expression. Seeing this, the two of them smiled. Du Fan asked, Master, how did you come back so quickly? We thought that it would take you half a year to go back and forth. The journey from here to here and back, as well as the time spent waiting there, would probably take about half a year. However, I have the teleportation scroll that the old man gave me, so I can go back and forth freely. That saved me a lot of time. She rested her cheek on her hand as she spoke. Master, what is Penglai Immortal Island like? Are the people there strong? Did you go up the immortal ladder? Lung Hua asked curiously. It's also just 2 eyes and 1 mouth. As for strength, most of them didn't increase their strength step by step. So generally speaking, their strength seems to be higher than here, but if they really fight, then it's hard to say. She spoke softly and paused for a moment before continuing. As for the immortal ascension stairs, there's nothing much to climb. I've already climbed it and reached the top. I was just 1 step away from stepping through that door and never coming back. Hearing this, their eyes flickered. Door? There's a door above the staircase? There is. It was a different world, but I didn't see it clearly. When I went up, there were a few old monsters on the other side of the door. They saw that I was a woman and told me to go over there. At this point, Feng Jiu laughed. Fortunately, I didn't go there. I don't know when I'll come back. The two of them were surprised. They knew that there were all kinds of strange things in the great wide world, but they did not know that there was a door in the sky that led to another world at the top of the celestial path. Master, if you could go to such a place, why don't you go? Maybe if you go there, those people won't be able to find you. Du Fan couldn't help but say. She had wasted such an opportunity. Chapter 2761. She absent-mindedly played with the cup in front of her and continued. Moreover, that Tianji elder only wanted me to take a trip to the stairway to heaven. I reckon that he did not think that I would be able to pass through that door. Also, I feel that the most important thing for this trip is not the other door that will be opened on the stairway to heaven, but rather the rewards of this trip. Speaking to this point, she curled her lips into a smile. All right, don't think too much about it. Go do what you need to do. She waved her hand, indicating for the two to leave first. Yes, the two replied. After saluting, they left. Fengjiu sat in the pavilion for a while and looked at the sky. Only then did she get up and leave. Using the cover of the night, she quietly entered the Feng Manor. The manor was heavily guarded. Not long after she climbed over the wall, she saw a hidden guard come out. Just as he was about to shout something, she gestured for him to be quiet. "It's me," she said. Seeing the shocked expression on the hidden guard's face, she smiled. "Don't alarm anyone else." "Yes, master." Hearing her voice, the hidden guard quietly left. At the same time, he gave the other hidden guards some orders. Thus, Fengjiu avoided the servants of the manor, but she did not avoid the hidden guards as she walked towards the Long Shuang's courtyard. She planned to go see the child first. The hidden guard watched her enter the Long Shuang's courtyard and could not help but quietly mutter, "Why does master like to dress like a beggar so much? Look, even her appearance has changed. If it wasn't for her voice and mannerisms, I really wouldn't have recognized her. Does master need to tell us what she does? She must have her reasons for doing this." Another hidden guard said, "But why did master come back so quickly? Looking at master's appearance, she should have quietly returned. I wonder if the people from the Heavenly Pill building know? If master did not say, then don't ask. Master said not to make a fuss. Aside from us hidden guards, whether or not anyone else knows is not something we should care about. If master wants them to know, then they will naturally know." In the courtyard, the door to a room was pushed open. Long Shuang, who was cultivating, immediately opened his eyes. "Who is it?" "It's me," Fengjiu said and walked in. Long Shuang was also stunned when he saw his master dressed like a beggar. "Master, you're back. I just entered the city today. I went to the Heavenly Pill building and walked around before coming here." Fengjiu walked forward and looked at the child sleeping soundly on the bed. He smiled and said, "The little guy seems to have gained weight recently." She reached out to pick up the child, but when she saw how dirty she was, she retracted her hand. "Master, I'll have someone prepare some water for you to bathe in," Long Shuang said. "I'll bathe here. Don't let the people in the mansion know that I'm back, especially the guest in the western courtyard," Fengjiu said as he stretched and looked at Long Shuang's room. Hearing his master's words, Long Shuang's expression changed slightly, and a smile flashed across his eyes. He immediately replied, "Yes." She went out first and instructed the servants to prepare her hands for the bath. Then, she asked them to bring some food over. The servants quickly brought some porridge and side dishes. When they were about to enter the room, Long Shuang came out and said, "Let me do it." Long Shuang said. After taking the things, she asked the maidservant to leave first. She then carried the things into the room. Chapter 2762. After the bath water was ready, Fengjiu went to take a bath in the cubicle. Not long after, she changed into a red dress and wiped the water stains on her hair. She took a green hairpin and tied up a strand of hair. The rest was casually let down behind her. The simple makeup made her look casual and lazy. "Master, the little master is awake," Long Shuang said as he stood by the bed and looked at the little fellow who had woken up and was rolling on the bed. "He's awake, let me hold him," Fengjiu said as she came to the bed in the inner room. She looked at the little fellow who was kicking his feet and waving his little hands on the bed. Suddenly, she caught a glimpse of the rattle drum at the head of the bed and couldn't help but smile. "You bought it for him?" "No, the Yama Lord bought it for the little master when he came back today," Long Shuang said, then said, "When the Yama Lord came back, he asked me to carry the little master to the hall. He held the little master and played in the hall for a while, then fed the little master some food. He didn't let me carry him back until the little master fell asleep." Fengjiu was slightly surprised when she heard this. She asked with a smile, "He knows how to play with children? He actually bought a rattle drum for little Hao." "Master, the Yama Lord treats the little master very well," Long Shuang said. Hearing this, Feng chuckled. She played with the little fellow on the bed and said, "This is our first child after all. How can not be good? Little Howard, don't you think so?" The child danced and giggled. His chubby little face smiled, and his eyes curved into crescent moons. That little appearance was very adorable. Feng couldn't help but lean forward and kiss his white and tender little face. Come, let mother give you a kiss," she said with a smile. She picked up the child and kissed him heavily on the cheek. With a pop, the little guy was stunned for a moment. Then he suddenly burst into tears. Feng was startled. She looked at the little guy who had suddenly burst into tears and couldn't help but be stunned. After a while, she recovered and said with amusement, "Little thing, I'm your mother. What's wrong with your mother kissing you? Was it too much? You actually despise it? Are you still going to cry for me to see?" The child's cries were extremely loud, especially in the darkness of the night. Even the other courtyards could faintly hear it. Xinyuan Mose, who was handling affairs in the study, paused for a moment when he heard the child's cries. He put down the things in his hands, got up and walked out. Master Hui Lang, who was guarding outside the door, greeted him. "Tell the kitchen to prepare some food for Howard. I'll go see if he's hungry," Xinyuan Mose said as he walked out. At the same time, Yun Shuixin, who had heard the child's cries, also went out. She went to the kitchen first and personally brought a bowl of rice paste to the Long Shuang's courtyard. On the way, she met Xinyuan Mose. She smiled and called out, "Senior." Xinyuan Mose stopped and glanced at her. His gaze fell on the things in her hands. Seeing his gaze, Yun Shuixin said, "I heard the child crying. I thought he might be hungry, so I went to the kitchen to bring a bowl of rice paste to the Long Shuang and let her feed the child. The servants will do these things. You don't have to do this," Xinyuan Mose said. Chapter 2763. As she spoke, she curtsied slightly. "Senior brother, I'll go first." As she spoke, she did not wait for him. Instead, she went to Lung Shuang's courtyard. When Xinyuan Mose saw this, he also strode forward. In Lung Shuang's courtyard, the little fellow had stopped crying. Feng had picked him up and was playing with him with a rattle drum. She saw the little thing blinking its black eyes at her. Those eyes were still filled with tears, and its watery appearance made it look like a little deer looking at her. Seeing this, her heart softened. "You're not crying anymore? You can't be so petty." She gently pinched his nose and said, "Other girls can't kiss randomly, but mother can kiss you. Do you understand?" The little fellow opened his small mouth and called out, "Ah." Suddenly, he began to giggle, making Feng smile as well. However, not long after, the smile on her face disappeared and she looked outside. "Master, what's wrong?" Lung Shuang asked. "Someone is here," Feng said. "Go out and send him away." She sat by the bed with the child in her arms. "Yes." Lung Shuang responded and walked out, closing the door on his way out. When she came outside, she saw a white figure walk in. "I heard the child crying. I thought he might be hungry, so I brought a bowl of rice paste over." As Yun Shuixin spoke, she looked at the tightly shut door behind Lung Shuang and asked, "Is the child in the room? I just fed the little master. Miss Yun, please take back the rice paste." Lung Shuang said. He looked at the person behind him, and his heart skipped a beat. The Yama Lord was also here? Master was still in the room. Would the Yama Lord notice? Master said to send people away. Among them, did the Yama Lord include? "Where's the child?" Xinyuan Mose asked. When he heard no movement in the room, Lung Shuang said, "He's in the room. He just fell asleep." When Xinyuan Mose heard this, he looked at Yun Shuixin and said, "Since he's asleep, you could go back first." "Okay, senior brother. I'll take my leave first," she said softly. After bowing slightly, she walked out. After she left, Xinyuan Mose wanted to go into the room to take a look. However, he heard Lung Shuang's voice, and he stopped in his tracks. "Yama Lord, it's getting late. I'm going to accompany the little master." When he heard this, Xinyuan Mose turned around and glanced at her. He saw that her expression was normal, but she was looking down at the floor with a respectful expression. Thinking that it was indeed getting late, he said, "That's fine too. Let him sleep. If he's hungry, have the kitchen send some food over." He said this and glanced at the tightly shut door. Only then did he walk out with his hands behind his back. However, just as he was about to leave the courtyard, he suddenly heard the sound of the child giggling. He couldn't help but stop in his tracks. He turned around to look at the room, then at Lang Shuang. When he saw that she was also looking at him, he instinctively reacted in that instant, and his heart skipped a beat. Lang Shuang was nervous? Why was she nervous? Could it be that aside from the child, there was someone else in the room? In the Feng manor, who would be able to sneak in like this? And Lang Shuang was still protecting her? In an instant, all sorts of thoughts flashed through his mind. His footsteps, which had originally been heading out, now followed him into the courtyard. Chapter 2764. Is the child alone inside? Xin Yuan Mose asked. He didn't stop walking. Instead, he walked past Lang Shuang and headed for the closed door. Lang Shuang followed behind him without saying a word. She watched anxiously as he pushed the door open. When he stepped in, she couldn't help but walk in as well. She thought she would see her master, but she didn't expect to see only her little master rolling around on the bed and playing with a rattle drum in his hand. She couldn't help but sigh in relief when she didn't see her master, but she was also a little surprised. Wasn't her master going to see the Yama Lord? Why was he hiding? Where could her master hide in a place like this? She gathered her thoughts and took a deep breath. Then, she stepped forward and asked, "Yama Lord, what's wrong?" Xin Yuan Mose looked at the little guy playing on the bed. He didn't see anyone else in the room. His eyes swept across the room and landed on Lang Shuang. "Your master is back." Lang Shuang looked up in surprise. "Master is back? The Yama Lord found out?" She looked at him and suppressed the guilt in her heart. She said, "I don't know." Xin Yuan Mose paused for a moment. Then he walked out. "Take good care of the child." Lang Shuang saw him out. After watching him leave the courtyard, she sighed and walked back into the room. However, when she saw her master sitting by the bed in the room, she couldn't help but be surprised. She asked, "Master, don't you want the Yama Lord to know that you're back?" "I just don't want Yin Xuexin to know that I'm back." Feng Jiu sat by the bed and played with the child. He said, "That woman doesn't look easy. I still don't know where she came from. She's already living in my house." Hearing this, Lang Shuang couldn't help but smile. "The Yama Lord misses our master." Feng Jiu chuckled. "I know. I miss him too. That's why I came back secretly. In fact, I'm worried that I'll attract the attention of those people and implicate you." She sighed. "With my current strength, I'm not afraid of them. However, if you go against them, you'll definitely lose." "Master, don't worry. We've improved our strength during this time." Lang Shuang looked at her and said, "Moreover, whether it is the heavenly Dan building or the mansion, we have strengthened our vigilance. Master need not be too worried. You should rest first. I'll go to the kitchen to cook something for him." Feng Jiu said. She got up and walked out, preparing to go to the kitchen to cook something for him. After Lang Shuang sent her out of the courtyard, he returned to his room. There weren't many servants in the Feng manor, and they were all trained. They couldn't be compared to ordinary people. When they saw Feng Jiu appear, they all bowed and left. After Feng Jiu left, the hidden guards in the dark came out and told them to keep their mouths shut and not mention their master's return. Even if someone asked, they couldn't say anything. Therefore, when they went to the kitchen, they didn't attract the attention of Xin Yuan Mose's courtyard. In the side room, Feng Jiu personally cooked 2 bowls of noodles. She added eggs, vegetables, meat, and other things and covered them with something. Only then did she carry the 2 bowls of noodles to her courtyard, because she knew that when she wasn't in the manor, Mose had been living in her courtyard. As she spoke, she saw his gloomy face relax. She then continued, "I also missed you, so I wanted to come back to see you. But who knew that when I came back, I saw you sitting in a restaurant with a woman. When you saw me, you didn't recognize me. For a moment, I was a little jealous, so I wanted to figure out the woman's background before coming back. Hearing this, Xinyuan Moses' expression relaxed. He looked at her and sighed helplessly. Even if you were jealous, you can't hide from me. Don't you know that I've been waiting for you to come back? That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.